Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. It is Thursday, January 5th, 2023. Happy New Year to all. This is being recorded and broadcast by WCTV and audio recorded by Jamie Wixton. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that we would have a brief moment of silence for Donna Swimner, who passed away yesterday. Donna was a longtime grade 2 teacher here in the Wareham Public Schools. Thank you. And we will shift in a complete 180 to good news. Do we have any good news we'd like to share? Joyce.
So today, spent the day in Hyannis at the DECA Districts Conference with some Wareham High students, some students from high schools all over the area. It was really a great day, really a fun day. We'll find out tomorrow how Wareham does. I'm sure they're doing great.
Thank you.
Dr. DeAndrea was there with me, a few rows behind me, judging.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, is now public participation. Is there anyone who would like to address the committee? All right, we'll move on. We have to skip number 4, report of the student representative, who is at that same DECA conference right now, overnight. And we'll move on to student advisory reports.
They might have thought they were coming in a little later. If you can come back to that.
Sure.
I told them 6:50. I thought
we are moving right along here.
right along. It's a good sign. They will be here.
All right. Well, I do see principals here, so we were going to have our principal reports, and who would like to go first?
I'll go.
Don't all jump up at once.
Good evening, school committee. Just an update from Wareham Elementary School. We'll do a past, present, and future. Celebrate the holidays here. Past. This past December, it just marked a time of giving at Wareham Elementary School. We just want to thank the Wareham community for that they donated and gifted to our families in need. Presently, Wareham Elementary has 926 students enrolled. And in our 81 days of school, our average attendance rate is 92.73, marking a huge progress from last year's attendance, so we're very grateful for that. And this week, Wareham Elementary School is conducting its mid-year ELA and math assessments in NUIA. This mid-year benchmark will help us gauge our growth during the fall season and make adjustments to our practice as needed. Future. February 8th, we have our winter concert, 6 p.m., featuring songs from both our chorus and band. The Wareham Elementary School's band percussion section has added brand new bells to their instruments this year, so you'll be hearing winter bells in our concert. And Wednesday, February 15th at 6 p.m., Miss Harunk's grade 1's class and Miss Allen's grade 2 class will be performing their Hall of Presidents. Each student will act and dress as a president of the United States and read aloud presidential biographies to their peers and families. And that's what's going on at Wareham Elementary School. We'll take any questions at this time. Yes, sir?
That Hall of Presidents, is that something the public can come to, or is that just done at school?
Well, you're invited. Certainly, school committee is. It's usually what happens in past practices, those families of those students come to it, and our school community, school committee and the staff that are there.
Okay, but is it open to the public if anyone wants to come there? I mean, want to get more people involved in the school.
Typically it's usually just those 2 classrooms, but I will put it out there for a newsletter just to, open it up, because it is quite amazing. Each of the children dress as the president, from the first president up until now. So and they have full costume and drab and they do the biographies.
Thank you.
April.
Does WCTV broadcast both the concert and the Hall of Presidents?
I don't I'm not sure in past practice, but certainly something we can think of. I
Just
think
if-
that
in
would be
case-
wonderful.
I was going to say, to engage the public, instead of having it
Absolutely.
open, maybe having it aired might be, for people that can watch
Mm.
later, would be adorable. And you said that the attendance rate was 92.73. Do you remember what it was the previous year? Just because I know you said it's an improvement over last
It
year, so
was-
I'm just wondering what the difference was.
Yeah, it's in my goals. I think we were maybe at 80%. It was below 90%, which is the state average, that's our goal is 90%. It was below that, Ms. Rossi, so we're going for 90. And so what we do each and every day, our daily attendance is, our guidance department's doing a beautiful job at Wareham Elementary, is taking attendance to see who has perfect attendance each day, and I read those classes out every single day for morning announcements. And they also have a perfect attendance right outside. They put little placards out every morning if they have perfect attendance in their classroom. The teachers do it, so it's throughout the school. So it's really helped improve our attendance and just make students excited to hear their classroom named for perfect attendance. Just one of our goals. One of
Thank
our
you.
many goals.
Jeff?
I do have a question, but could you repeat the dates and times for the concert and the presidents?
Yes, sir, Mr. Sweat. It is 6 p.m. February 8th is the chorus and band concert.
6 p.m. on the 8th?
Yes, it's a Wednesday. And then the following Wednesday is the 15th, and that's also at 6 p.m., and that will be the Hall of Presidents.
Got it. So more on the attendance. First of all, I know the superintendent took an initiative with respect to COVID testing. Do you have any idea of how well that was followed by parents?
I don't. I just know that we passed it out. We
Okay.
passed each and every test out to all students in the public school.
I didn't expect you to have a good
Yeah.
answer. I was just curious whether you
Yeah.
got any feedback. And the second related question is, when you think of the attendance that you've had in the first 2 days, 3 days of this week,
Mm-hmm.
has it been any unexpected attendance problems in these 3 days?
No, actually, it's improved. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have much improved attendance than we did in December. We had a flu. The flu was pretty rampant going around Wareham, I think elementary, but maybe Wareham Public Schools, maybe all of Wareham. We had poor attendance in December, but when we came back, I noticed, and I can read it every day, so I hear myself speaking about these classrooms, and I think today, I'm just going to estimate, I said about 11 to 12 classrooms with perfect attendance.
So all that socializing during the holidays didn't seem to have a negative impact.
And no, I don't think it did at all.
That's good news. Thank you.
Yes. And I think that the flu has more passed. It feels like that we've stepped beyond that, so.
I guess I should, totally unrelated, but in thinking of the problems you had with the AC system this summer, the heating system, I assume, is working well?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, yes.
Good. You did eventually turn it on, right?
Yeah, we did, although it's quite warm right now, so, no, we did. And it does fluctuate level to level from the preschool kindergarten area because heat rises, right? So it's very fascinating how the heat does fluctuate in the levels within the building.
But you have some controls, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we do.
thank you.
Brennan?
I just have one more quick question about the band and the choir. Do you know the size? How many kids are participating in it?
I will say that I think Mr. Hart is very optimistic this year with his band enrollment. I don't have the approximate size, but I could give you an estimate of about 30 students in the band and about 30 students in choir, and it is only grade 4.
No, that's excellent still. Good to see a turnout.
Right, and the bells this year are brand new to our school, so it's, they're almost like a xylophone. So when you think of bells, it's not like ding, ding, ding. It's like a xylophone, and it's part of the percussion. So it's in addition to just the snare drum. There you go. That's what I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Chandler.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
For Wareham Middle School, we had a very busy holiday season. Student Council and Honor Society worked with Turning Point and volunteered time to help support community families. We celebrated a Spirit Week before the break. We also celebrated with families at our High Honor Breakfast in December for Term 1. Honor Society collected over 100 toys to donate during the toy drive in December to needy families. And Student Council ran a food drive at the end of November for Damien's Pantry. We do have a band and art concert, which we're calling our Winterfest, on January 19th. There's 2 performances. One will be at 5 o'clock and one is at 7 o'clock.
What was the date?
The 19th, Thursday the 19th.
January, right?
Yes,
Do we have a meeting that
We
night?
do.
yes. But you might be able to
Maybe
make
we
the
get
5
some of the
o'clock.
beginning one, yeah?
You will be getting special invitations. Term 2 ends on January 24th. That means we're halfway through the school year at that point. And currently at Wareham Middle School, we are in NUIA. We're in our second round of NUIA that started this week for math, and we'll be moving into ELA. Parents will get a report that goes home with Term 2 report cards. We also had an ST Math Challenge, so we receive a grant, and all of Wareham Middle School participates in ST Math. Some kids love it, some kids hate it, but it's really critical math thinking, and our goal is to get all our students at 70%. So our goal for December was that each individual student was over 31%, and if they were, they participated in a reward. We had over 240 students in the reward, so we're really excited about that. That's about it for Wareham Middle School. Any questions?
April?
Do you have, I know that we were thinking about trying to improve the attendance over last year. Do you have your attendance
I don't have it from
percentage?
last year. It's better.
Or
I'm
no,
sh-
for the, what
I'm-
it is, has been so far?
Yeah, it was 89% in December. Before that, it was averaging about 93%. December, as Dr. Chandler said, was not a good month for us. I don't notice many differences right now. My major concern is students that are over 18 days already. Yes.
How many roughly do you have?
I
Do you
don't
know?
have the number. I can certainly have that for you the next time. But I send out attendance letters. I send letters to doctors' offices. I get releases of information to speak to doctors' offices. This is about 2 hours of my day and about probably 3 to 4 hours of my guidance counselor's days, trying to get kids to come to school.
Is there anything more that parents could be doing?
Send
I
their
mean, you know,
kids,
besides sending them to school,
send their
obviously,
kids
but-
to school. Send their kids to school unless they're throwing up or have a fever. Really.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
They can always
send
go
them
home.
to school. We just want them in school.
April?
What is your current enrollment at the middle school?
We have about 425.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions?
I saw you nodding your head. You had a similar positive experience in the first 3 days. You didn't have any attendance problems?
It's better than December, definitely.
All set, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, I guess I'll start off with my attendance. So,
Theme?
it's interesting to hear, we don't compare data very often like this as far as attendance, so it's interesting to hear the themes are very common. So we had 93.2% in September, 93% in October, 91.3% in November, and 90% in December. And as you can assume, when you throw in the holidays, those are when the numbers get down a little bit lower than a traditional school day. So anything that kind of dovetails holidays are usually some of our weakest days in regards to attendance. So that's our attendance. In December, we had a lot of, as you can imagine, holiday events going on, gift baskets for families. The culinary department donated a lot of food to the Kendrick House, and a lot of things like that were going on before the holidays. But I'm really excited about after a 2-year hiatus, Mr. Murray and the Wareham High School staff brought back the holiday gift event. And what that is, and we all have them, unwrapped gifts that we receive that we really don't want. And what we do is we encourage the staff to bring those in. And Mr. Murray has been coordinating this for many years. Again, because of COVID, we had to take a little hiatus. But the staff was really generous, more generous this year than I think in years past, and they're always very generous. And we put these in the conference room in the guidance office, and the staff, the day before holiday vacation, they come in and they bring wrapping paper, and during their prep periods, they'll wrap the gifts for students. Students can go down either before or after they eat lunch, and they each get to pick one gift that they can give to a family member for the holidays. And it's really cool for me because I'm in all three lunches, and I get to see the kids and how proud they are and happy they are to have this gift, and how excited they are to be able to give this gift to a family member. It's a really great event, and I thank Mr. Murray for bringing that back, and I know the kids benefited, and I know they were very excited to give those gifts, so it was really cool. As you understand, a lot of work has been done over the last few months on the course of studies. We'll be presenting that to you shortly, so I just want to recognize all the committees, all the school council, and I'll recognize them again in a little bit, but all the staff and students and everyone that was involved in that process. I got a little bit of my thunder stolen, but that was a good thing. I want to thank Joyce and Dr. DeAndrea for volunteering to be judges at the conference, at the DECA competition, excuse me, held at the conference center in Hyannis, Resort and Conference Center. This is the regional competition, so this is the first of potentially 3 competitions for our students. So it starts as the regional states, then they go to the state, and then they go to, I call it the international, it used to be national competition. And we're excited to have our students involved in that process. We anticipate good results tomorrow at the award ceremony, but certainly it was really cool for you both to give up a good portion of your day to go down there. And it's a great event, and certainly encourage, especially if you were involved when you were a student and you have the opportunity, we'd love to have more school committee members involved in the future. So if you are interested, don't hesitate to reach out. It's always the same time of the year, just for your scheduling purposes, and we'd love to have more people involved, but it's a great event. So another great event that we have is College Homecoming, which is happening on Thursday, January 12th. It happens at the end of the day at 12:45. As you may remember, this is an opportunity for the Wareham High School alumni in college to come back and speak to the seniors. So if you have a college student, Mr. Bajali, and she is...
Nephews only. Nephews and nieces only.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Relatives. We'd love to have them there. It's a great event for our students. I love sneaking in and listening to them talk about the transition and their experiences that they had not only at Wareham High School, but in the transition to college. It's a great learning experience for our seniors, and I think it serves as great motivation for them to start to get excited about that process. So if you know of neighbors or family, nephews, nieces, please encourage them to reach out to the guidance department at Wareham High School. But certainly, if they could, to block off Thursday, January 12th at 12:45. We would love to have a dozen and a half graduates. And I love having different grade levels, too, because everyone has a different perspective. So we're not just looking for freshmen. We're looking for sophomores, juniors, seniors, et cetera, because they all bring a little different perspective. And, it can be any school. We have kids coming in that are in community college to Ivy Leagues and everything in between. So everyone is welcome. And we have a little ceremony afterwards with some snacks after the kids leave, and for the alumni to come in, and staff loves to come down and see their former students. So it's a great event. As many of you know, winter sports are approaching the halfway point in the season. It's going really well. The teams are very competitive, and they're having a great time, most importantly. And as you heard from the middle school, our term/semester 1 is ending on Friday the 20th of January, and this is a time when students would have in their classes mid-year exams in the classrooms, and they would also have an opportunity to switch to the semester 2 courses for those half-year courses. So a lot going on in the next couple weeks. Attendance is really good for the first 3 days. I don't want to jinx it, and the attitude has been awesome. I think the kids really appreciated that break. It was maybe a little longer than usual. And it's been a great, again, week, so I hope I don't jinx it for tomorrow. Certainly entertain any questions you may have.
April?
So, For the college homecoming, are the seniors are all the seniors, do they all go to this, or do they choose to go to this?
They are strongly encouraged
Can we
to.
forcibly encourage my particular senior to go to
Well, I
this?
saw your senior going down to guidance the other day to work on
Oh,
something with
good.
college, so.
Good.
uh,
I
he-
get no info, so that's why I'm asking.
He has a pretty good plan. I happen to be walking with him as he was going down there. But yes, they are strongly encouraged to be there, and most will be there because they may have an opportunity to miss a class to go there, so most will take it. But more importantly, I think there's valuable information they're going to receive there.
And how many same question I asked you, how many students do you guys have currently enrolled in the high school?
I believe last check was 619.
19. Okay, thank you.
Brennan?
I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
First of all, for the comment, thank you for that gift exchange, because my son hid his mother's present in his bag for like 2 weeks. He was so proud on Christmas morning to have a gift. I asked him, do you need to get a gift for mom? And he said, no, I'm all set. Okay.
Did you know what it was?
He knew what it was. I guess he knew what it was because he picked out the perfect gift for her. She loves to do art, and it was a little, like, paint your own hedgehog thing that she, you know.
That's awesome.
And she loved it, but even after he gave her the gift, he didn't want her to know it was from him. He's like, it's a secret. I'm like, she opened it. You can tell her now.
That's awesome.
But that was a great program, obviously. I mean, it was a great gift for her, and she absolutely loved it. She was over the moon that he had been able to hide it for her for so long. The question that I had, obviously about the DECA thing, definitely let me know. As a former DECA student and champion, I would love to go. You know, have a chance to judge would be amazing.
I'll pass that along to Lisa when she gets back.
My question would be, as you're reaching the half point, I wish I had asked this earlier, what's the biggest challenge you currently have in the school right now that you'd like to overcome by the end of the year, as you're looking at like the halfway point?
Wow, that's a great question. Biggest challenge, I hate to throw it back on attendance, but it's really
What it
attendance
is.
right now. I mean, you have to be, they love my staff behind me, they love my saying, you have to be on the job to do the job, and if you're not on the job, you're not learning. And, you know, and I heard, you know, the message to the parents, they need to send their kids, obviously, if the issue now is, you know, during the holidays, we have more students that are ill, whether it be with the flu or whether it be with COVID, so our numbers are coming down. And again, I don't think it's unique to just the high school. But that's really our biggest challenge is just getting the students to school. I remember, you know, April asked earlier, like, what were your numbers like last year? Well, I remember my numbers before COVID. We were always hovering around 95%. And that's kind of the, you know, the industry standard. You want to be at least at 95%. And that's what the state wants. And it's just frustrating when, and it's weird, it's the younger kids. Like, when I first started, it was the juniors and seniors that had the worst attendance rates because they'd get their license and then they'd decide either to come to school or not to come to school, and then you'd have to work that angle. Now, my juniors and seniors have the best attendance in the building. It's my 8th and 9th graders that I'm getting, you know, kickback from, and they're struggling to come in. So I'm actually going back to doing home visits again myself. It's something that worked in the past, and we're bringing it back to fruition now that the pandemic is over. So it's just the attendance is probably our biggest hurdle.
Well, I'll let Jeff go.
No, finish.
Well, I know, I mean, I can say that as a parent, and this is why I asked the question earlier. I mean, with COVID and with all, you know, flus and everything like that, I think that it actually makes a little bit of sense that it's the younger kids to some extent that are, you know, having attendance problems because parents still think of them as their little babies and not sending them off to school, you know, if they're not feeling well. I mean, I know I've struggled a couple times with Jacob where it's like, you know, do I want to be patient zero for an outbreak? You know, if I send him to school and he's coughing a little bit, is that going to be the reason why, you know, everyone in his class is out for 2 weeks later on? I mean, especially with, you know, with what happened with COVID, where there was kind of unclear guidelines from doctors and everybody else as to when to send. What message would you like to give parents who say, my kid's a little sick, I don't know what to do? Should I err on the side of caution, or is it better to send them and take the chance? Because that's the struggle I think that a lot of parents have. And I think that we have a clear message that we've been saying is send your kid to school. I mean, you know, we can wear masks, we can take precautions. Is it safer to do it that way, or what would be your best practice?
Well, I'm not a medical professional, although sometimes I play one in my job, right? So I think it's really, the parents have to make that decision. If the child has a temperature, obviously they shouldn't be sending them. If they're fearful, you know, that they could be contagious with whatever they're dealing with, certainly we would rather have one student stay home for one day than, you know, 3 or 4 classrooms have to stay home for multiple days. So I think parents certainly have been and have to err on the side of caution. But with that being said, I wish I could say to you, Brennan, that's the issue right there, but that's not the whole issue. Like, that is probably 2 to 4, maybe 5% of it, but that still doesn't equate to 100 in the overall scheme. So we have some kids, and as we do the history, it's habitual, that they just don't come to school. And I mean, I was taught, unless you're on your deathbed, and this was obviously before the pandemic, you're going to school. And to be quite frank, it was a heck of a lot easier to go to school than it was to try and stay home. So, you know, I know it's different now, and I get it with the pandemic and with the concerns that we have for outbreaks and things like that. But I think if we could just really focus down on the kids that aren't in the situation you described, and that parents aren't pushing them to come to school because they don't want to fight the fight. That's the
You
group.
feel that that's a bigger
It's not
issue with attendance than is like, you know, medical reasons kind of thing? It's,
Well, the medical is our largest percentage, like, so just say, you know, we're at 90, let's say 93 for October, because it's a nice round number. I would say that probably 3 to 4% fall into the medical concern category, but that still gives us somewhere between 3 and 4 that fall into the category that I'm really concerned with. So that's the one I'm really focusing on, because I can't really control, you know, the medical issues that are going to come up in the times we're dealing with, but I feel like I can control, or try to, I like to think I could control the ones that aren't coming in that should be coming in. That's the ones we're really focused on, because we feel like we can make a change in that behavior.
thank you.
Jeff?
So it's so easy to hear these numbers about attendance and extrapolate something into perhaps a problem that doesn't exist. So this is for all 3 principals. It would be really interesting to know if you subtracted the pick a number, the 10 worst offenders, okay?
Yes.
Okay. What would the attendance for your class look like?
Were you in my dean's meeting on Wednesday?
No, I was not.
Okay.
Okay, because if you said, just so you know, if you subtract the 10 worst offenders, our attendance rate is 97, 96, 90, whatever it is.
Right.
Because that would tell us that this 93, which actually may be good, but it doesn't sound good to me, that it really is a function of a very small number of students elevating that percent and lowering that percentage to a relatively small number. Tracy's shaking her head saying that's not the problem, okay? But to me, that would enlighten me to some extent. And the second issue is, and I know hypotheticals are an awful thing, but Mike Bloomberg actually tried to pay kids to come to school because as a billionaire, I guess he thought he could afford it. But I'm not sure if it ever got off the ground. So here's another hypothetical. Put aside the fact that it's totally unrealistic. What do you think would happen if a student was considered truant until they were excused by the school nurse?
Well, I guess I'd want to know your definition of truant.
Well, truant as in, if the school nurse says, you're fine to come to school, I just took your temperature, your blood pressure, whatever else, you're fine to be in school, so go to class, okay? Versus, you're right, you should have stayed home, now we're gonna provide you, I told you it was hypothetical, we're gonna give you a ride home, okay? So.
I need about 3 more nurses.
Agreed, right. That's why it's a hypothetical and the resource. But if you think that would, quote, make a significant dent because parents don't want their kids classified as truant, okay? That also tells me something. The bottom line is, this is not unique to Wareham.
No, and I speak to, every month I meet with a group of principals, and actually, we're in better shape than most schools in our conference anyway, in regards to attendance. But our issue, like the high school, we don't have a lot of leverage once they turn 16, as far as to require them to come to school. So I can, with anyone that's like up to 15 and a half, we can file a CRA, child requiring assistance, with the courts. But the ironic piece is, which we do, because that's a tool we have, but then they have to be every month in court missing school, so it's like, where's the benefit? We do it because sometimes it's the last tool in the toolbox, but...
But your numbers are better than the middle and the elementary. So, you know...
For now.
Well, my bottom line is 16 is not an issue for the middle school and the elementary school. So.
Right, right.
It just seems to me, this is a problem that for everybody's sake needs to be addressed in some constructive, efficacious way. And it's one thing to have these numbers reported and us to shake our heads. It's another thing for us to put our heads together and maybe do something outrageous with the goal of actually accomplishing something.
Right, right. And it's as far as the high school goes, to go back to your 10 students, it's like 4% of the population that we deal with attendance, habitual attendance issues, and ironically, it's the same thing.
Sounds like it's not that wouldn't help the middle
It
school.
may not. Again, every school is different.
Yeah.
Ironically, it's also 4%
Okay.
with discipline.
I share your frustration.
Thank you.
April?
So this is again for all three principals. So I know that attendance is a struggle in general, especially coming out of post-pandemic. I think the high school, the kids may have been, especially the older kids, had that more sense of longing to go back to pre-pandemic, where the younger kids may have had less memory of what life was like pre-pandemic because they were more formative when it started, and that's basically the memory that they know. So from that perspective, I think that might be the difference why you're seeing the upperclassmen more excited to be back in what they grew up with, whereas the younger kids are growing up with what is now. My question to all three is, kids are guided by their parents, right? This is a family, this is a community problem. Do you guys feel that part of the problem is it a transportation issue? Are there illnesses with the parents, not necessarily the children, that are causing the issue? Is it more of a social, emotional, or an anxiety or a mental health issue, so that we know where we need to direct as a school committee, like what community resources we can do to help these families get their kids to school? Because we know that there's a wait list for busing. We know that there's a shortage of drivers statewide, nationwide, not just in the district. But do you feel that that issue is what's the backbone of your attendance problems?
I'll speak first. As the elementary school principal with 930 students who are dependent on their families to get to school every day, my biggest concern is the social emotional welfare of all of our families and making sure that our children are following a wonderful, a very careful schedule with their families, predictability. I still feel like some of my parents need help, some social emotional help there, to be honest with you. Not into getting into any specifics, but I do feel like my students are dependent on the families and their dependents to get to school.
Oh,
And-
absolutely.
And I do feel like I have healthy students that are not coming to school because they're dependent on their parents who may not be healthy.
Okay, thank you.
April, I think you hit it. You categorized every issue we deal with, and I think they're all pretty equal. But to me, it's definitely the social and emotional at the high school and the transportation. Because remember, these rates, like DESE, you're either there or you're not. If you're hospitalized, you're not. If you're
It's just a
COVID
blanket
positive
answer.
for 5 days, you're not there. So the number, as you dig pretty deep into these numbers, you go, wow, for every kid that's in, a psychiatric hospital, we're getting dinged. For every kid that has to stay home for 5 days and then come in with a mask for 5 days, we're getting dinged for the 5 days they're out. So it's pretty dynamic when you start to get deep into these numbers.
Yeah, and for us at the middle school, it's definitely not transportation. I have data that we collected and shared with our counselors on December 1st, so this is old data. 140 students, 32% of my students have been absent 4 or more days. 150 students, 34% of my students have been absent 5 or more days as of December 1st. 5%, 9 days is considered at risk. 10%, 18 days is considered chronically absent. So that does not look good. So you're talking 34% and, what did I say? 30-something%.
You can't
So
succeed.
32%. So you're talking
Succeed.
66%. We only have the children for 180 days. If they're missing 10 days out of those 180 days, what does that mean? You can only go so far.
See, this is information I feel that the public really needs to understand the importance of getting the kids to school. And
Absolutely.
helping them succeed, no matter what. So it's heartbreaking that there are families that have that level of issue, whatever the issue may be at home, that it's, really affecting
And
these
we have a
kids in the long
homelessness
run.
situation too. So some of our students are not getting to school because they're homeless and in different towns and their families don't have the transportation, and we're kind of in this.
Does McKinney-Vento cover that,
Yes,
though?
it does. Every case, though, is very different. It needs to be reported. If it's not reported,
Then it's not
then
covered.
it's not valid, right?
Understood.
So we have some families, which I feel like we're just a little bit intransient. However, thanks to our communication, I feel like that the principals, we speak to each other. We have social workers, guidance counselors that work diligently every day, making phone calls, filing CRAs, going to courts, calling families, meeting with families. We do all of the attendance letters, and not only just from a caring standpoint, just from a caring standpoint, it's so important. Not just the law, but just that we care. We want to make sure,
Something you might want to think about, I know the timing is very poor, so I apologize, but when I started, we had a gentleman by the name of John Romano that worked in the school district, and he was the attendance officer for the district. So, maybe down the road, maybe it's something to think about when the times maybe get better to maybe reinstate that. If these attendance issues are still a problem when we get to that point where the times are better. It was very helpful, and I only saw it really in my first year or two. As a teacher, I wasn't paying a lot of
Would
attention.
that be something that possibly at a state level might be grant funded, or something that can be looked into as a grant funded position if attendance becomes that level of an issue within a district?
There's grants for almost everything, it's just a matter.
Dr.
I'm going
DeAndrea?
to add that to your list, but
So the state of Massachusetts obviously has recognized that this is an issue. And they're launching a new program called Engage Massachusetts. It is for grades 6 to 12. And the intent is to reach out to families of districts that there is chronic absenteeism, and identify the academic and social emotional barriers. And then assist families in addressing them and supporting them and getting them back into school. They've identified a number of high schools that they would like to support. They have identified Wareham High School. I have submitted an application to be part of the program. I'm still waiting to hear. But they have reached out to me and said that they have started the process and that they will be in touch with me soon. So I think probably in 2 weeks when we have our next meeting, I'll be able to provide you with more information. I'm hopeful that we can include the middle school once we get going with this.
great,
Jeff?
thank you.
You finished?
I am, thank you.
Two things. One is, the next time you report on these numbers, it would be helpful to me, at least, if I had two numbers. One is the DESI number, and the other would be the one that doesn't include excused absences.
So I think that one would be the DESI number, right? The one that's...
No, there's no excuse for DESI.
No, right, so you
So we're agreeing.
excuse it, yeah.
Yes.
Excused and unexcused absences, basically.
Yeah, so you can report it the way DESI insists on it being
Right.
reported. But also, I'd be interested in the
Sure.
number if you excluded absences that were excused.
Gotcha.
Okay?
I also think, I agree with you, and I have that data as well.
Oh, you do? So
I do.
what
So
percentage difference does it make?
Unexcused, I have unexcused with 4 or more is 16%. Excused, 4 days or more is 14%. So it's half and half. With the 5 days or more unexcused is 80 students, 18%. Excused only 47 students, 11%. Here's the thing, though. I have seen so many doctor's notes. My fax, it goes all day long.
Everything's excused.
Doctors write notes if you just call them. They are. And that you can equate to COVID. That didn't happen before. Notes after notes after notes.
And my question for the superintendent, how many high schools were on this list?
Oh,
Just Wareham, no, I'm just kidding.
about 36. And some of the local ones, Barnstable's on the list, Dennis Yarmouth, Falmouth.
So
And it's like 36.
10%, so it's about 10% of the state,
Yeah.
roughly.
A little
I mean,
more,
there are
yeah.
some regionals, but there's some. I'm also a firm believer in carrots and sticks. Is there any way, I mean, at a certain point, to your point, doesn't a family deserve DCF getting interested and maybe you're not actually doing a good job in letting your children know that going to school is a good idea? I mean,
That's part of the CRA process.
Yeah.
DCF is involved in the CRA process.
exactly. So do we ever report families to DCF because they're not getting their children to school?
Always.
I just did,
Constantly.
We already do it.
We file 15 days, educational neglect. And we file CRAs.
And after, in a term, 8 unexcused days, we can file a
I
CRA.
got it. Thank you for
Yeah.
educating me. Thank you.
It's just, it's a very long process. We spend a lot of
I
time
share
on
your
it.
frustration.
No, Brennan.
I'm sorry, Brennan?
Actually, you said that, you talk to the certain families and the non-medical ones. What kind of feedback, after you've talked to them, is there any improvement, or does it tend to be the
Sometimes.
same?
Sometimes,
Okay.
yeah, I think we make progress with certain cases, definitely.
What more can we do to help?
If there was a magic bullet, if there was a magic bullet, we'd like to give it to you.
Well, I know, I don't know if you can help with this, but I know some schools give savings bonds and things like that for perfect attendance. So if we had, maybe some motivation like that, I think,
Bigger carrot.
that,
Yeah,
right.
the problem is, the kids who are not a problem are gonna be always
Right.
winning.
Right.
They are, but maybe there's a kid on the edge that be like, ooh, I want to get that, and I'm going to work to make sure I come into school whenever possible. So I don't know, I know there's a couple schools that do that. It helps out, but to your point, yes, probably 85% of the kids are going to have perfect attendance.
Still, maybe if we can even identify those, like a turnaround award or
We
something.
give awards for perfect attendance, as I think all the schools do, and it's my honestly favorite award, and that's part of my speech when I give it, is, it's my favorite award is the Perfect Attendance Award, and we do it for every grade at the end of the year, and it's awesome. And we also, and I think you guys know this, we had a kid that had perfect attendance from kindergarten, this was pre-pandemic, through 12th grade, and that was one of my favorite nights to recognize that person. And there's many of them that we go back all the way to 5th and 6th grade with perfect attendance, so it's obviously instilled in them at a very young age. They need to be in school every day.
You will let the student advisory people behind you know that this is gonna be one of the questions for them?
They're taking you all in right now as we speak.
I just think it's also important to understand that we were also telling families not too long ago to stay home if they were sick. So those mixed messages, it's not a mixed message, but it's just some families are being very cautious. And now we're saying, okay, get to school, get to school, get to school. So there is a fine line there of which we play, where if your child has a fever, please have them stay home for 24 hours if they're fever, So there's also that too, that during COVID, it was like, yep, nope, sorry, come to school, don't come to school. Don't come to school for 5 days. So they're coming back off of this. The families are coming back off of this. So this is the year where just trying to really encourage everybody to be there each and every day,
Well, thank you very much.
quarantining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the Student Advisory Report.
Awesome. Well, thank you. They did make it in.
Yeah.
So, I have Gisela Priestley, who represents the grade 11, and Autumn Francis here for grade 12. And thank you both for being, thank you both for being here. And as you know, we meet bi-weekly with these folks, and we have 2 other representatives that unfortunately couldn't be here. And we try and solve the school's problems in a half-an-hour meeting every other week. And they have done a lot with surveys to make sure we are getting the cross-section that we need for decisions we're making, and they bring issues that other students bring to their attention to our meetings, and they've just done a great job. So I'm going to turn it over to them and let them kind of talk about some things we're working on and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we've been working on recently is a survey that we were talking about, what Mr. Palladino was talking about. It was kind of a broad survey. It touched on things such as mental health, dress code again, and course selections, which had a lot of good feedback. It didn't get the numbers that we wanted, but it did show the kind of like each grade proportionately. So there was, yeah. So we got good feedback on course selection, such as a decent amount of students requesting an ASL class, which, yeah, I've had a lot of friends personally speak to me about that one.
ASL stands for?
Oh, American Sign Language. So, yeah, that was one of the things we've been working on.
We have also, actually, I'm going to continue on with the survey. We got around the same amount of responses as last time, which is not, I mean, we could have done a little better. We could have gotten a little bit more responses because we weren't even counting the seniors from last year. So we hopefully.
How many did you get?
We got 90, 80?
I think it was 100.
Oh, yeah, around 100.
Around 100. And I think it's just because, like, with the surveys coming in, it's just like a little tiring for the students to answer them every time. But there were some, we looked at some responses. I wish I could pull them up, but a lot, from what I can remember, a lot of them, we had them rate on a scale of 1 to 5 between like how, for example, like how heard do they feel by the administration, for example, and then you'd answer that like 1 through 5, and then like questions like that. And I think a lot of them were either neutral or on the 4 to 5 spectrum, which was a good thing because 4 to 5 is the better answer. So I think a couple maybe were on the lower, but I remember. And we also got a couple responses for a question where it was like, pick the words that describe you and your experience in Wareham, and it was like proud, happy, anxious, sad, you know, stuff like that. And I think we got like normal teenage responses where it's like anxious because school, and so everything seemed pretty normal. So.
And we're still digging into this data. We just gave it before the holiday vacation, and we had one meeting so far where we were able to dig into it. So they're still working through the data. But to Giselle's point, what we were really excited about, we weren't excited about the 100 responses, but what was interesting was that proportionately we had the appropriate responses per grade by enrollment. It was almost perfectly proportionate to the size of the student body in that grade. So we were disappointed with only 100, but it was a pretty intense survey that they responded to, and a lot of open-ended questions. So we're still digging in. We have a meeting on Tuesday of next week, ironically, to tackle a little bit more of this.
Would it be ever possible to give that survey maybe during Viking block or anything to
That's
get?
when we do it.
Oh, you do it, and still you only get.
This one was
100.
quite in-depth.
Okay.
And like I've said to you before, we unfortunately over-survey the students kind of to a detriment, but it's the easiest and best way to be inclusive of all students. So I think, you know, the surveys this one had 28 questions, so the surveys that I know, but they were great questions though. And they required some thought as well, so I think a few kids might have been like, okay. So we're going to, you know, usually what we find is when we keep it to 5 to 7 questions, we get a better response rate.
So yeah, speaking on mental health, which is one of the questions that we kind of tackled in this one, I think that's a big problem right now. Key Club, we just got a grant for a $1,500 grant to try to see what ways we can tackle that. And so another way that, another change or something that we're trying to implement is bringing in service dogs to help cultivate joy and just have another reason for students to come to school, even though it's not the biggest impact that it could be, or like, yeah. It's just something that we have been thinking about and has had pretty good support. So
Puppies make me happy, so I agree 100%.
We have come across some a little bumps with it. We're trying to still figure out whether did we cover whether it needs to be like hypoallergenic in case people have allergies, and during what times they'll be able to see the dogs, because we're thinking during advisory, but advisory is only like 30 minutes, and the dog can't get to every classroom in 30 minutes. So actually, one of my friends suggested, I don't know if we covered this, but we could just do it on different days. So like Monday through Friday, maybe like a certain amount of teachers with the names.
Do we,
Still waiting.
Needs program, right?
yeah, do we know when he's getting his dog, Officer
Still, from
Baptiste?
what I understand, it's still being trained, so I think it's going to probably be more towards the end of the year.
Mhm.
But they're looking to do something kind of around that midterm time of year where kids might be a little stressed out. So they've got actually calculated dates that they have given me windows when they think March, because it's a long month as well, was another week they were looking at. So, we've kind of internally found some good information from Dr. DeAndrea and a few other folks in regards to avenues that we might be able to go down. So hopefully at the next presentation, if the dog hasn't been in, we'll be able to kind of tell you when it will be coming in. So we're pretty excited about that.
And then I think one last thing for me is that, again, on the topic of like anxiety, we, after speaking to a good amount of like juniors and seniors, there's a lot of anxiousness and just like worry about planning after high school. I don't think it's an issue with communicating the resources we have here. I think it's an issue with compiling it. I think we're already kind of overwhelmed with everything that's coming in. We always get like at least 20 emails from teachers every day. So I don't feel like the resources that are being communicated, they're getting through to students. So Mr. Palladino came up with an idea of having like...
You came up with the idea. I didn't come up with the idea.
I think you came up with it.
No, I just...
And,
go ahead.
of a kind of like a flow chart where we would, that would be created with the guidance counselors, that would kind of be like almost like a checklist or a flow chart of steps students should start thinking about and who they could get in contact with to have help with those with like getting through the flow chart. And on topic with that, again with the Key Club grant, one thing that we're going to be working on is highlighting the resources that we do have here. Colonel Stanton would like to, since we have a decent budget from this grant, to make a kind of like a banner or a poster or a giant poster highlighting what the mental health advocates we have in the school are, like what they do, where they are. Because after talking to Ms. Geis, she was explaining that a lot of teachers, they already have a lot on their plate, and sometimes they don't know whether to send a student who's crying to like a guidance counselor or to someone else. So just compiling the resources we have.
And Ms. Geis is our school psychologist.
Brennan, you have a question?
Yeah, the same question actually that I asked the principals earlier. So as you guys are getting halfway through your year, what's the biggest challenges that, you know, speaking for the students or even personally, what's the biggest challenge you're facing? And second part of that, what can we do to help?
That's a really good question. I think,
only get one, so.
Yeah. I think for the Key Club grant, that's the exact same question that I've been asking everyone. And I think that's it's a hard question because it's like compile everything that's maybe not the best about high school into one thing that we can fix for you. But I think, again, it's just anxiety about what's going to happen or the unknown. Because like we said, we just came out of, we're just in a pandemic. We're still facing it. It's a lot going on for students, and the uncertainty of, am I going to go to college? Which college? I think compiling resources, communication, I think that's the biggest issue for me, just the anxiety of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand it. I'm a former Wareham graduate, and I mean, I had 4 years to figure it out, and I realized that for a lot of people, having 2 and losing half, you know, I couldn't imagine only having half of my high school experience. And so, I mean, congratulations to you guys for getting through. And I mean, by all accounts, you guys are doing a great job. I mean, we can't convey to you students enough that you're doing a good job. Like, you'll get there. Don't worry. We'll help you figure it out. You just, like you said, compiling resources and help. We're one of those resources. So please don't ever be afraid to come and let us know what we can do. That's why we're here.
Jeff?
So first of all, don't be disappointed with 100 responses. If 100 people chose to answer 28 questions, that's a good thing. And surveys are tough. Did you have an advisor for putting this survey together?
Kind of, Mr. Palladino, and yeah.
I think with this survey, because it was so intense, we went over it at an administrative meeting as well, just to make sure that, we were sensitive to all. And I think we even tweaked it a couple of times just to make sure, we wanted to make sure the question was pointing the students in the right direction so they could answer it appropriately. So I think we just tweaked, a few words here and there, just some wordsmithing. And, but we definitely, we don't like to send it out unless it's 100% ready, because we really want to get a good response on our surveys, and we send a lot of surveys out, and we use them obviously quite a bit in various capacities.
Yeah. I also had Colonel Stanton look over the questions too before I sent them to Mr. Palladino, just because he's facilitating the mental health grant. So
28 is too many, but anyway.
Half of them were optional, to be fair. So
There were a few that were optional, that's true.
Now, you won't be surprised by this question. What are all these old people missing about the issue of attendance?
In my experience, I have pretty much good attendance this year. I haven't
Sure you do.
missed any school. And my opinion on this is partly that the student, I think someone was saying earlier how the juniors and seniors are missing less school. And I think that's also due to the fact of how difficult their classes are and how important they see their credits as. So in my opinion, hypothetically, even if I wanted to miss school, I wouldn't be able to afford it from all the classes I have and how much it means to me that I make sure I get through the school year fine. So I think that's also part of it. So I believe that the younger kids are, I'm not calling anyone out, but there's someone I know in
What are their names?
No, I talk to them and I try to explain to them how important it is, and they're younger, they're a couple grades below me, and they still don't, they have fine attendance, but they don't see the super importance as I do now for how important it is to have attendance and represent your school, especially as a senior. You're supposed to be the example for the younger kids. So I also believe that if the seniors aren't respected, then it's a sad school.
You are not speaking for your sister, I hope.
No.
No, definitely not. Definitely
No,
not.
of course not.
April?
So I absolutely love this group, and the kids that you guys bring in are always great. And I love, it's one of my favorite things about Wareham is how heavily we place an importance on student voice. And with this committee, just out of a random question, does the elementary and middle school have a student advisory, or is this something that could be looked at and have the upperclassmen or the high school kids mentor them to learn young? That I know that we've talked about adding clubs and student council and newspaper to advocate for their voices, but having the students kind of talk to each other about what's important and value their own opinions as peers to bring to the group, and have even the upperclassmen as mentors. Is that something that's a possibility? Does that already exist, or is it something you guys have thought about?
We do it a lot for our student council in our honor society.
Okay. But not specifically this, a student advisory trickle down?
Student Advisory Council is required by law at the high school level. It's not.
Well, I just meant to get them to understand the importance as they get up and into it, that their opinions and that they're asking the questions of their peers. I mean, it's a difficult thing. Some of the questions you guys pose to your fellow students are not easy questions to answer. And it's asking them to be vulnerable about what they're afraid of, what's hard for them, what changes that they want to make. And I'm pretty sure it's probably not anonymous, or is it anonymous?
We try and do them anonymous just to get better feedback, because if you keeping track of names. People
Yeah,
aren't
so,
gonna get
I
honest.
mean, but the fact that you're asking your fellow students and even anonymously to give up that kind of information, I think it's really admirable. And I just absolutely love when you guys come and present, because I think your voices are really important and you all articulate yourselves really, really well. And I think you should be as an example to the younger students, because I think what you guys do is really important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Joyce?
So I don't really have a question. I just want to say I love your idea of using the grant and with Colonel Stanton to make a display of the resources that are available. Because like you said, you all get so many emails a day. There's so much information, and not just students, but staff in the school too. So just to be able to see what's available, it might make someone think, oh, well, there is someone who I can go to, or I know that person, oh, they can help me. So that's really, really, visuals are really important. So good for you. I think that's a great way to use that resource.
Dr. Schwann?
I just wanted to ask about those emails. So I understand that students get a lot of emails, so much communication, right? Because we want to communicate. Everybody wants everybody to know what's going on. But I'm wondering if in your flow chart, particularly as kids are getting to junior and senior year, if there's a way in which you can identify particular emails that they need to pay attention to specifically, right, as they're moving through the college process, or somehow help students understand that it's probably not a good idea to shut it off, or, right?
Like Dylan.
But to keep, but also that they know that there's some pattern of it, I guess.
What I'm thinking you're saying is guidance department has a Google Classroom for the grades, so it'd be important for them to make sure that's clicked on. I think that's the alignment that you're talking about. Like,
Yes.
you know, they have a lot of resources there. Make sure you're in that Google Classroom.
Yeah, something like that.
So Giselle and Autumn, I just want to thank you for taking your time out to do this, for using your time during the school day and school year to be a voice for the students. And you really, you do it well. So thank you both. You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and you are welcome to go home and get to your homework. So thank you very much.
She needs to get to her studies. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring a few more chairs up.
Don't go anywhere, Mr. Palladino. You're a busy man tonight. So next up is the Wareham High School Course Selection Program of Studies, which will require a vote.
I'll sit over there. What's that? You guys can sit here. I'll jump on that. Come on in. I think I have enough chairs for everyone now. I'll take Indy's chair for a minute. So I just want to introduce everyone to the school committee. Starting furthest away from me to your right, I have Justin Skelly. Justin is the department head for math, foreign language, phys ed, and health. And to his right is Ashley Yates-Pagan, who is the IB coordinator for the school and the district. And I have Andrea Cannon, our special education assistant principal, Kim Kavicki, assistant principal for instruction and curriculum, Amy Dion, who is the department head for science, fine arts, applied arts, and business, and Mike Murray, department head for humanities and JROTC. So thank you for having us here tonight. We'll get started right away with our course of studies. So what we have always found, I think the easiest to go through this massive document is to talk about changes. So I'm going to be working off the change sheet. And before I get started with that, I just want to remind the committee that this is our program of studies. These are courses we could offer. I can promise you every course in here is not going to be able to be run and isn't being run right now. But when we put this on a course selection sheet, we move forward with the intent that we could run these courses if there is enough interest. Now, obviously, some courses are required. We know we're going to run English 9 CP every year. We know we're going to run Algebra 1, et cetera. But these are courses we could run. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind. I also want to just thank We talked about surveys with the Student Advisory Council, but we have done a lot of outreach with students, staff, department heads, administration, and I want to thank all of them for their involvement in this. We've worked with our student advisory group, which you just met. You just met the two young ladies representing our group. We've got a total of 4 students that are involved in the student advisory. We also have our student reps, student advisory reps that meet every month, and they were very involved in the process. Our school council was involved in 2 meetings. We had it on the agenda, so I want to thank them. Thanks to one of the members who caught an oversight in numbers that we'll get to in a minute. And it's just been, I think, a really inclusive program that we've been able to get a lot of input, and appreciate everyone's input. And department heads obviously played a huge role in getting this off the ground. So I am going to just start us off, and then you'll hear from everyone here for any changes that involve their particular department. So obviously, we changed the year on the first page, and I'll try and be brief on some of these obvious changes. We've got table of content changes as we move into page 2. As we adjust and add new classes, delete classes, there are some adjustments there. We also have the core values and beliefs. This was the NEAS, core values and belief in 21st century learning expectations have now been removed, and now it's the vision of the graduate, and Kim's going to talk about that in a few minutes. But we've deleted that because that is not a requirement for accreditation, so it's now everything is the vision of the graduate. And I'm pretty excited about the vision of the graduate because we were, I guess, lucky with the time. We were going through the strategic plan for the district at the same time as we were preparing for our vision of the graduate. So you're going to see a lot of the language and articulation is going to be very similar to the district. So it's really cool to have a high school vision of the graduate aligned with the district vision of the graduate. And then last but not least, we have just on page 9, I mentioned a school council member that's obviously very good with numbers. Notice that despite the fact that we got rid of an SAT prep at 2.5, our numbers were off. It is actually a 22.5 is the accurate number for the credits, and these would be credits for additional courses. So thank you to that person for recognizing that.
Mr. Palladino, could you go to just for page 8 for a second, if we're just going in order? So can you explain where it says you need 30 credits to go to grade 10, 60 credits to grade 11, 90 credits to grade 12, but then it's 130 to graduate. What is the extra? What are the extra 10 credits come in for that?
Well, these are kind of matriculation points to move to the next grade. It's a total of 130, and this was just how we split it up so that kids could matriculate to the next grade level. They have to hit.
Oh, so many would have more than that going forward.
Right.
Okay.
It's basically the students can attain 40 credits per year. So most of them, this is a minimum threshold.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Kim, who's going to talk to us more about the core values and beliefs and the vision of the graduate. So Kim, we'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. So as you have heard, we've changed the core values and beliefs to now a performance outcome that is under that umbrella of the vision of the graduate. So in prior course of studies, each course had a 21st century learning expectation attached to it. We had four of them, and what that meant was that was a learning expectation that course focused on. It did not mean that it didn't focus on any of the other expectations, but that was just sort of a highlight of that course. So now that we have the updated version of that with the vision of the graduate, the staff had voted to adopt that process using the new performance outcomes. So you'll see under each course, there's now a performance outcome that's associated with that course, either communication, responsibility, emotional intelligence, perseverance, or critical thinking. Communication, perseverance, and critical thinking are the 3 that align directly with the district strategic plan. And at the end of every term, teachers report out to students on the report cards standards grade, so either a 0, 1, or 2 rating, rating each student based on a rubric that they have discussed with the students on each of these performance outcomes. So for example, a business class focuses on communication, so they will rate the students on either not meeting, in progress of meeting, or meeting the standard for communication, and so on for all of the different performance outcomes. Each department has their own that they focus on, or each content area, excuse me, and the staff also voted to adopt, to choose to adopt which one they were going to report out on, so.
That's good. And we were pretty excited that everyone got their first choice, which was great, because sometimes when you give people the option, everyone's picking communication, and that wasn't the case, which was great. So we're going to move on to our community college career and life, which is our pathway for public safety. We had a committee that met for 2 years looking at various pathways, and we anticipate trying to create a pathway every year that we can kind of add to. We felt the public safety was probably the best fit for our students, and there were many reasons why. And basically, when I looked at it, I thought it was the best one because we had the infrastructure in place in regards to some of these classes that we are already running. There were only, I think, 2 classes that we would have to add through this pathway, and they would be added when the students were upperclassmen. But the majority of coursework was already in play, and yeah, I guess we'd say it was in kind. So Ashley was the chairperson for this, so I'm going to turn it over to her if you have any other feedback on the pathways.
Yeah, so we had looked at what we already offered, what we could possibly offer, and then through the survey with students, we surveyed them based off of the 5 ideas that we had come up with, I think we were presented on before earlier. And public safety seemed to be the most popular, if you will, just because it had the most applications for immediate jobs right after high school. And so we looked through what we could possibly offer, what we could also offer through dual enrollment. So as you can see, you know, criminal justice, well, we might not be able to offer it in the high school. It was a possibility for us to do it through BCC or Cape Cod Community College. And we also reached out to, I think it was Cape Cod Community College, in terms of offering EMT dual enrollment. So students would be able to take that in their senior year and leave with having that certification on. Students could take it if they were 16 and up, but they wouldn't be able to actually practice that until they were 18. So I think other than that, it's pretty cut and dry.
We also looked at Upper Cape in regards to vocational offerings that they have, and this is not one that they would offer. So I was kind of excited to possibly be able to get this going, and then looked for Chapter 74 certification. And going back to the EMT piece as well, in the next town over, there are actually 2 schools in Carver that offer EMT training. So if logistically Hyannis wasn't a great option, there are actually 2 schools right on Route 58 in Carver that will train and certify you as an EMT.
Quick question.
Yep, Jeff?
Did anything ever happen with the airplane mechanic?
Yes, we sent 2 students there.
Great.
Yes. So it's been, basically, the Cape Cod Community College has a airplane mechanic school in the Plymouth Airport, and they invited all the area principals, and Mr. Sweat was a big person to get this going, and I forget the other gentleman's name. I met him there. There was another gentleman as well that really got this going, and we had an opportunity to actually tour the facility, speak to all the reps, and they gave us all kinds of literature to bring back to our schools, and we were actually hoping to have some interest where we could possibly work with some of the schools, Fairhaven, Old Rochester, Bourne, and Wareham, to possibly have maybe a dual enrollment program in the future. So it was a really great trip, and I thank you for initiating that whole conversation. But for me, just seeing the facility, I was floored. And if you ever have a chance, and I'm sure Mr. Sweat would have the contact, and I know I have the folks from Cape Cod Community College, that it's an amazing program they have there. And the students, it's a little less than a 2-year program, and the average salary is 6 figures coming out of there. So it's a great program. And,
Yeah,
and
the
it's,
demand is huge.
It's 99% placement from that program. And I think you can be all in for about like $25,000, which is a great investment in yourself. So it's a great program.
Joyce?
I just have a question, and you can tell me if this isn't the right time to ask it. So I'm very much in favor of the career pathways. I think it's great, and public safety is a great choice because we all know that they are looking for people to go into that field. So I asked this at the last time we talked about career pathways, like you said, I think it was at the strategic plan. meeting, and the career pathways that were presented that night were, included IB classes. So this one also includes maybe an existing IB class, is global politics an IB class? And then you're asking us to add another IB class? I know I asked this question the other day, Scott, and you weren't sure, so maybe this personal and professional skills course?
There's IB philosophies, but it's not an IB class. And students, for most of these IB courses that are already pre-existing, they would have the option. It's, so like if I took on grade 12, if I can, they can take any of those courses under the English. It's not that they have to take the IB. They can take, they could take grade 12 English literature. They could take AP Lit. They could do the IB. So there's options. They're listed here, but it's not inclusive only of IB courses. And we'll get to the description of the professional, the personal and professional class that I think you have a question on. We'll get to that description in a few minutes on that course.
Okay. Okay.
Did I answer your question though on the, given the English example?
I don't see other Englishes on this list, or am I just not looking at that?
Are you looking?
Oh, okay. Under English, it says grade 12, sociology, or maybe is it and/or, I'm not sure, personal and professional skills. Under math, no, sorry, recommended courses on grade 12.
So if you go down about halfway to grade 12 under English, it lists 4 options for English, one of them being a non-AP or IB, 2 being IB, 1 being AP.
Okay, so I'm looking all the way down the bottom
All the way
under
down,
math.
that's the career-related coursework that they would do, and you're looking at sociology and personal and professional skills.
And right next to that, it says Spanish or French, EMT, and
Correct.
global politics.
As recommended courses.
So can I do this pathway without taking global politics?
So there's no certification at this point. It's just recommendations that they could potentially take as a pathway. So these are just recommendations. That there's obviously, we still have our local requirements, 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 2 years of a foreign language. But these are just possible recommendations that they could take. It's actually similar in the course of studies where we have different pathways for AP and IB that they can take. So these are just possible recommendations, not requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are now, you're going to hear a lot from Amy Dion. Amy, because of the nature of her department, she has a lot of electives underneath her jurisdiction. So get used to Amy. We're going to turn it over to Amy for some changes in tech design and a few other things.
All right, within business, we were removing the tech design lab course. It was previously a requirement, which at a previous date, we removed that requirement and put personal finance as a grad requirement that was by state brought in.
And Amy, this senior class graduating now is the last class that has that as a requirement. So now everyone in the school will have the personal financial literacy class.
Correct. So removing that, there are parts of it that we also wanted to kind of embed, sort of the digital citizenship, digital literacy, but then incorporate that into marketing and how best students can use that. And social media marketing kind of came from what was left of that tech lab class that we really felt had some meat to it that they could still use. A lot of the other things are embedded in every single class, like the use of Google Documents, things like that. So that was sort of revisited, and we've taken away one and offering to put in another one that is more current with what students use on a daily basis.
So we'll jump into the personal and professional skills. And this is a potential class that we may run as part of the public safety pathway. And this is going to be a new course. And Ashley, you were in charge of the committee. So if you wouldn't mind just talking about this class and what it's going to all be about.
Sure. So as part of our discussion about how to get students out into the workforce effectively, it came about in terms of, we need to teach students how to perform in the workplace. It's not a natural skill that they'll learn in, an English class or anything like that. And we talked a lot about school to career and what that meant. But we talked about how school to career didn't really address some of the skills that they would need in terms of, effective communication or interpersonal skills, or what does it mean to have ethics on the job. And so we looked at courses that could address that. So this would be combined with the internship. So we would send students out, and they would have days in the classroom where they would learn about how to be an effective communicator, or, what does it mean to show up on time and do the job that was asked of you, those types of things that might arise.
Thank you, Ashley.
So, I'm sorry, I have a question. Can we-
Go ahead, Joyce.
So since I had the opportunity to see this a few days ago, well, we all got the packet, right? So I've been asking questions, I've asked Mr. Palladino questions, and I've tried to find the answers that I can by myself. So if I go on the IB website, it tells me that this class, Personal Professional Skills course, exact wording, exact description of the class, is a requirement of the IB career program. So I just feel like I appreciate your description of what the class you want to teach the kids, because that is certainly very valuable in lots of situations. But I just feel like we're not being told the whole picture, right? So obviously this is an IB class. It's on the IB website. It's a requirement of the IB career program. But why aren't we being told that? Why do I have to find that?
We don't offer the career program.
Out myself.
So this was a course that we thought could best address some of the issues that were talked about in the committee discussions in terms of how, school to career might not have been successful. Really, a lot of students didn't know what to do when they got there, and so we thought this course would best address that. We don't offer the career program, so, we take and borrow where we can.
It's not going to be identified on the transcript either as an IB course, so it's.
But do you understand
Yeah, I
my
see what you're
question?
saying.
Do you understand why that just seems?
Yeah, it's the philosophy.
You're saying that you thought this would be a great name for a class and a great class to teach, but you left out the part that it's an IB class. We might not be teaching it as an IB class, but it's an IB class. So I wish just someone would have said that yes, we're going to take this IB class. And the reason that I'm asking all these questions about IB at this point is because I've asked a lot of these questions about, why is IB valuable? How do we measure the success of IB? Where do we go forward with IB? And I've never really gotten the answers to that questions. But what I have been told in the past is that IB is considered approved at this meeting when we approve the course of studies. So that's why I'm bringing these questions back up at this point. And that's why I did a little more research on my own so I could try to educate myself. So it's just, it's just disappointing to me that that you didn't just say, this is a class that we found that is an IB class that we're gonna run. That's just how I interpret it, just me and myself. Like I said, I've tried to do a lot of research myself, so, thank you.
Jeff?
Just a follow-up question, and I'm not asking this question from a perspective of knowledge. This is an ignorant question. We are an approved IB school.
For the diploma program.
Well, for the diploma program.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
If someone wanted to offer the class to which Joyce is referring, and they were not an approved IB school, could they offer it?
You can offer whatever you want, but they couldn't say it's an IB class.
So
They could offer the.
The curriculum is publicly available.
To a point, yes.
Well, it either is or it isn't.
Once you're a DP school, you have access to the curriculum.
Right.
Right, and that was my point. But if you're not a DP school, could you offer this class?
You could, but you couldn't associate it with anything to do with IB. And
Where would you get the curriculum?
well,
Wing it?
we have to create our own curriculum.
You created the curriculum?
IB is just a.
IB didn't give you access to.
It gives you access to their standards within the curriculum, but the teachers have autonomy and freedom to choose what it is they do within their courses. So it's just saying these are the overall standards that we'd like to address with these ideals, But you, essentially, as a teacher, have the opportunity to then create what you think is going to be best for the students that are in front of you. That's the whole philosophy around IB. You're not required to use their any books. They don't propose, they don't do it. We get to decide what our students need. We just follow the expectations that are given to us by them.
I'm very both enlightened and inexcusably ignorant as I'm sitting here, because what it sounds like is you get to use the brand, if you will, speaking like a business, you get to use the brand called IB, okay? It's almost like I'm associated with the YMCA. You know, that's a brand, okay? And we can't call ourselves the YMCA unless we pay dues to the YMCA, right? So you get to use the IB brand, but it's not, and they have a certain philosophy, okay? And they have certain standards and ideals, et cetera. But the actual hard work of creating the curriculum is done by the staff, okay?
But you want it that way, though, too.
I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I get it.
You don't want a canned curriculum and say, here you go.
I get it, but it's one thing for them to offer you a template of curriculum that you get to augment, edit, you know, do whatever you like. But you guys are doing much more than that. You're creating it within a certain philosophy. And then ultimately IB comes around and judges you as to how well you're actually doing it, okay? Which is...
It's similar to AP, too. You know, we have to actually, with AP, you have to go through the standards and then get it approved. So it's very...
But AP has a national set of exams.
So does IB.
So, yeah, IB does as well.
And IB does too.
Right.
Okay? But the actual curriculum, you get trained in how to instruct, you know, but the actual curriculum is the hard work of the actual teacher providing. So, back to my original question. So, our teachers could take this philosophy, which is public knowledge, okay? They could create this class, which on its surface looks like an excellent class. The only thing they couldn't call it is a IB class, because that's a brand that they're not allowed to use unless they're actually an IB school.
Correct.
Right.
I had never thought of it that way.
Sure.
So I appreciate being educated. Thank you. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but it helped me.
April.
So with the option of having it be just formulated or based on like a suggested class title, we'll call it, because you guys obviously, if you're creating the curriculum for IB, and AP has a weighted exam, those credits follow, like.
So does IB.
So, right, no, I understand that, but like, there are some classes where there's multiple levels of class in one classroom. Like you might have some AP students, some IB students,
Amy
and
teaches
some,
one.
right,
Amy-
I know that Dylan's in a couple of
That's
them.
right, Dylan's in there.
So I understand that there's like, you know, I'm like, oh, I have class, I thought that person wasn't doing IB. They're not, they're in AP, but so even if it's AP, IB, honors, they're all still getting some stuff slightly altered
Differentiation.
for their exam purposes, but for the most part, they're all getting that same level of education. Is that
Well,
correct? Like the same
It's a little bit different
framework?
because there's different expectations for different levels. Amy, like what she has to do in that class is unbelievable because she has, I think, at least 3 different levels in the class. And she has kind of 3 different curriculums that she has to work through and differentiate. Now, there's a lot of commonalities, but she has to differentiate. The assessments are differentiated, especially at the end.
The reason I'm asking is to Joyce's point, when it mentions that it's an IB, I think.
IB philosophy, I think it
IB
says.
philosophy, or I think it says the IB learner profile, it says.
There you go.
Is that something like, if it were weighted, like you have like English or AP English, honors English, CP English, is this something that could be categorized for those students that are working towards their IB diploma as an IB class, and have this be like a CP version, an honors version, or an IB version, or is it just as it is?
As it is.
It cannot count towards DP course.
And it wouldn't be weighted either because it's not an IB or an AP course.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Amy, we're gonna, if we're okay to keep going, Amy's gonna be back on the stage.
Yep, I just have one right now, and that would be, in addition to applied arts, would be foundations of baking. So students would have to take culinary 1, and then we have a few different, currently have an intro to a lunch, a dinner, and a breakfast, and now he would like to add a foundations to baking, so it's a more focused.
And the final exam is whether it tastes good?
Maybe they should present to school committee as
Good
part of
for
the
you.
final
I
exam.
volunteer.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I was going to say, on Friday, you can order if you want.
Yeah, there's been a certain member someone up here has been getting a couple Friday meals. More than welcome, though, with all seriousness, if you're ever interested in lunch on Fridays, please stop by. It's like, what is it, like $4?
Yeah, he usually does a full.
$4.
I think we should compete with Upper Cape.
I think we've got a better chef and probably better students, too.
Amen.
All right, so we're going to move on. Mike and Andrea are going to kind of talk about looking at inclusion from a different way, and we are looking to incorporate more special ed students into IB, and this is kind of a pilot class that we're looking to run this year. So, Mike, we'll turn it over to you and Andrea.
Sure. I want to start by mentioning, talking about this in the context of, I have 2 kids in college, one on an IEP. They both go to state schools. And I have one, my youngest kid is in high school, is a sophomore, and is also on an IEP. And by the way, Ms. Rossi, they don't ever master the email checking.
He shuts his notifications off. Because he says he gets too many, like Gisela said that they get a lot, and the senior year is very important.
He's a brilliant artist, by the way, for real.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, he shouldn't have to worry about emails.
No, he really should. He
So-
really should.
When I think back in English, say, I don't want to put a number on it, say 10 years ago or so, inclusion 11 English, would be, read, watch, listen to, whatever, the reading. Probably do a lot of comprehension type questions, really kind of slog through it, but in a very kind of surface and comprehension way. IB is completely the opposite of that, right? It's a deep dive, but more than that, it's a student-centric dive into literature. I believe that's the purpose of this course, and that's my hope actually, is that it brings the level of detail with literature and engagement, student engagement, to a more inclusive level, so it's to a different population. Ironically, though, actually, the teacher that's developing this, is the GOAT in so many ways, right? Who's going through that, right? She teaches the IB 11. This year, I always get this confused, she's the year 1, I think.
Yes.
Thank you. And the 2-year course, and she also teaches the inclusion sections of English 11. Now, I've observed both of these. It's sometimes really, really hard to tell because of the training that she and other teachers have gone through. You can't get rid of that new way of looking at education. And that way is for example, actually I was subbing just for a little bit in her class today, and there was a assignment on the board, or on the ViewSonic, that was on the board. There was about the Crucible, and students had to, they had a choice to look into multiple aspects or ways of approaching the Crucible. And you would think, oh, this is going to be incredibly sophisticated, gatekeeping almost, as we're getting into literary criticism. No, but it has to do with looking up things that are the students have great interest in. The effects of rumors was one thing that was out there. And if you've read The Crucible, that's a major component of it. Or different groups in society and rejection of those groups and bullying and stuff like that. So these students are going to explore real life issues that are of interest to them through the lens of the crucible. And that's basically, I would say, how IB approaches literature. So what is the goal for this is that the teacher, along with her current co-teacher, and they have a wonderful, wonderful system. They're going to try to develop this so it's a 1-year, perhaps more palatable course for a more inclusive population. And back to my 2 kids. My kid who's about to start UMass Dartmouth, he has an IEP that, of course, as many of you know, it transfers over to college. It's not called an IEP, it's slightly different. The professors are a little different too, arguably, in how they may or may not honor these things. Sometimes you have to push a little harder. But there are protections, and one of those protections largely, it says you have a different learning style. It says that maybe you have depression and anxiety, and maybe you need some space, maybe you need some extra time, consideration. It's consideration. But what it doesn't mean is that you go to this class where you're just going to comprehend the words on the page. You know, you're going to have the same expectations as everybody else in the college that you go to. We need to prepare all of our kids for that. And I think this course, we're going to experiment with it if it's approved, and I think it's a step in that direction. Do you want me to go into SAT, or do you want this one first?
Well, can Andrea just chime in? But
I'm sorry.
I do want you to go in it. But Andrea, I know you, last spring with Mike, went to a training that kind of got this all started. So if there's anything else you might want to add, that would be very helpful.
So the co-teacher, the special ed co-teacher hasn't gone to the training yet for this, so she'll be going to this in February.
If we get approval.
Well, yeah.
Or later, spring.
Or spring, okay. So she'll be going to the training on this, and then I think our next steps with it is once she goes to the training, we're gonna meet again to talk about any questions she has, just with modifications and how to meet the needs for students and things like that. And then from there, that's when we'll offer the class. We'll look at the students and we'll see which students should take this inclusion class. So I think we're like in the early steps of it, but we have to get it approved before we can move forward with it. So we don't, it's a choice for an 11th grade class is where we're at right now with it.
So what is the percentage that we're thinking of, like in terms of regular ed student taking this for IB credit, I assume, and a special ed student also taking it for IB credit? What are the numbers do you anticipate?
Well, it wasn't necessarily for IB credit.
Okay.
And the testing, the idea on the table is that testing is optional. So it's about removing a lot of the barriers. And sometimes students see that end of the year exam as a barrier. And so it was about removing that and not really requiring a lot of the conditions that may be typical of a DP course.
And that was one of our concerns, I think, was that if the student was expected to take this test at the end of the year, then that would limit modifications we could make for certain kids to take it. So that was one of the first questions I had when I met with Ashley to talk about it was, you know, I'm concerned with not necessarily the student with a social emotional disability, but more the student who is reading at a 3rd grade level, you know? So like those were my concerns, and that first thing they said was that the test is off the table if they don't want to take it. And so that, I think, led to more conversation about modifications that could be made and things like that.
Well, the test is optional.
Test is optional, and that's an important piece because that is a barrier. Some students choose not to go into AP or IB because of that test, not because of the fee, because we brought that down to almost nothing. It's more about that apprehension and the concern. And to answer Mr. Pajoli's question in regards to the numbers, it's hard for us to truly predict because it is such a student-driven process as far as what the number, I hope the numbers are through the roof because I think that would be a good
What do you think, like a 50-50 mix?
Well, it can't be over 50-50, obviously.
Right, so that's what I'm just...
IEP and regular ed, it would have...
Legally, we can't have, right, it has to be less than 50% special ed.
We definitely want it, you know, like in a perfect world, maybe, you know, 20-80 as far as percentage, you know, 20% IEPs, 80% not IEPs, but it fluctuates. It's kind of, it's beyond our control, but it also helps us to dictate how many sections we need depending on how many students are interested in the class.
I guess just a general question would be, like Mr. Murray, you described this as being really good teaching, which it is. It's engaging, it's tying into the real world, which you would hope would be happening in all our classes, in theory. Yes?
Sure, no, and that, well, that's the thing, I guess I was kind of trying to get at ineffectively with the training and I guess the sort of cultural shift. Are we 100% there yet? I don't think so, but I think we're so far there that you could never take it out. The IB philosophy, you know.
April?
I just think that I agree that it's great in having them with critical thinking, and you made a good point, especially having a student who is on the spectrum, who is started off in inclusion classrooms and has moved through Wareham Public Schools since first grade. Some hiccups here and there because he's a teenage boy, but you know, I think Wareham Public Schools has done great, and he does take 2 IB classes. He has taken an AP class, and I do think that those course loads, better than memorization and just recitation and having people read things and take a test, is making them think, and that information sticks with them better. One of the top schools in the state that's nearby where we lose students to is Sturgis. It's an IB for all. Every student, no matter if they're special need, no matter what they are, all has IB curriculum 100%. And they're one of the top schools in the state. So I think that we're on a good path with this. And I think having the test for that sort of situation be optional, I think is going to be huge in exposing more people to how beneficial that this style of learning will be for the kids for the future.
All right, thank you. So,
Joyce?
So in the course of studies, there were no classes removed. So in order to add this class, you didn't remove any class. But how many classes of 11th grade English do you run? So which English classes do you expect that you would run?
So,
It'll be different numbers next year, of course, because the 10th grade is slightly larger, I think, or maybe I have it backwards. So, yeah, and right now, that teacher teaches all 11th grade classes, so.
So if you're looking at our 10th grade kids, this year we're running 3 inclusion classes. So based on the numbers from that, like we have 3 allotted, like the special ed teacher teaches 3 co-taught classes with a different teacher because it's 10th grade, but like next year. So with the numbers, if we weren't offering this class, we would probably offer 3 11th grade inclusion next year. We would offer 2 10th grade based on numbers. You know, it shifts every year based on numbers. And so my thought would be based on the kids who opt to take this class, depending on how many, that would be like where the shift would come. You would offer 1 CP inclusion, let's say, and 2 IB or 2, you know.
Right.
Like it'd be based on the numbers.
So I guess, so they'll have a choice. So as to, I know maybe you don't run every level, but you'll run CP or honors and IB and AP, because is there still an AP 11th grade?
So it really, like, what I love about the process is student-driven. The students dictate what we're running. Now, obviously, at some point, we have to make business decisions as what we can run and what we can't run. But every kid needs an 11th grade English, so it's just a matter of what is that English going to be, and then how many sections does Mike need to come up with. But the sections are usually pretty consistent. There is a little bit of a bubble in 10th grade, which is a great thing, and hopefully that will continue on through. But it's really, every kid needs an English for all 4 years, so it's not that, you know, we didn't cut 3 sections and we're looking to do 3 sections of this. We just have to see where the numbers come out at the end.
Okay, so, and then, last question, what is the difference between this class and the AP? Is there still an AP literature class?
Sure. Well, the teachers that teach those 2 classes actually have told me that they could, that IB would be able to encompass what AP asks for, but that AP does require that test and is different training. I mean, it's a similar way of looking at literature. I would add that IB is much more of a global focus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're not gonna, whereas the AP is, for example, is an American literature class in 11th grade, but the IB is global lit.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about students who will have to make the decision, do I take AP lit or do I take IB? If I take IB, I don't have to take a test. If I take AP, I do.
I don't think there'll be kids that are going to look at it going, oh, I want to take this IB class because there's no test. I think what we'll have is kids that are looking to challenge themselves say, instead of doing CP like I've done for the last 2 years, I'm going to take that challenge because I know I'm not going to be required to take a test. So I think it's going to open more doors to kids looking to push themselves a little bit more. But only time will tell, and only data will tell us.
As long as we're able to still run the classes that they want to take, that we're not,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Okay.
Do they have to declare ahead of time whether they want to take the test or they don't? Or when the test time comes up, do they opt in or out?
Registration for the exams is in November, so they would have until November to make that decision.
Okay, but still fairly early in the year. Okay.
So this isn't just English related, but how many students have received an IB diploma so far from Wareham High School since the inception of the IB program?
We presented that, but I want to say 6 or 7.
And how many are in the pipeline right now in grade 12 to receive a diploma, would you say?
2.
Okay. Jeff, you had a question?
You're talking about you're talking about the full diploma, right? Not just certificate?
Yeah. You met one of them who was here today. So I was not aware that this option to take the exam, is that now for all IB classes unless you're in the diploma program?
Just this one class.
Just this one class?
Just this one.
Okay. I have this, as I'm sitting here listening to, and thank you so much for your being here tonight. It just occurs to me that, first of all, Mr. Murray says, it doesn't matter what you're teaching if you've been trained in the IB methodology, and I'm speaking, if I'm paraphrasing inaccurately, Mike, let me know. But it doesn't matter what you're teaching, but if you've trained in the IB philosophy, it's going to be a part of you regardless of whether you're teaching an IB course or not. And then I'm hearing that kids with IEPs, and of course they can be very bright, but they just have a different set of challenges, they're going to be exposed to this IB philosophy, at least in this course. And I'm sitting here thinking, what about the CP kids who are only taking CP? I remember like it was yesterday, one of my tennis captains, this was way back, saying to me, my goal, coach, just so you know, is to never have to take a CP class. And she probably never did, because she was excuse me?
She took one.
You know who I'm talking about?
No, but every student has to take world history, CP.
Oh. Okay, maybe that's the reason that was her goal. She took it and said never again.
I'd like to think not, but.
I guess, have we thought about the fact that there's a certain inherent value in this philosophy, that if it can be inculcated into the CP courses, that then you'd have everybody benefiting from the critical thinking, for example, that is a part of the IB philosophy, especially now that I know it's the teachers who are doing all the work, and IB is just, there to say, yes, you've got the philosophy right.
Not to switch gears and go off topic here, but I think that has a lot to do with the MYP and the MYP training. And the other thing is, we do have some teachers that teach one singleton IB class that have gone through the online training for IB. So to Mike's point, they do embed that, and you do see those characteristics in a CP or an honors level course. You do. But we have some new staff that we have to get trained, so it's not perfect, but we're getting there.
Perfect is the goal,
Absolutely.
Never achieved.
All right, so Mike's ready to tackle the SAT prep class, and so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Just to bring it full circle, neither of the college kids took the SAT. I think what basically the only change here that we're proposing is to no longer have it a requirement to graduate.
Good.
Kids will can still sign up to take it and will, but they won't have to suffer through it if they really don't want to.
So it's interesting because when I started as principal, this was an elective, and there was a push to improve SAT scores, so we brought it in as a requirement, and now we're bringing it back to the requirement, to the elective stage. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy. She's going to go through, on the next page, we have a bunch of highlighted changes, and she's actually going to dig into the courses, starting with Foundations in Digital Art, that are having some course description changes. So I'll turn it back over to Amy.
So our art teacher that teaches the digital arts, she's probably in her 5th or 6th year, and she's ever reflecting and refining. So she has taken a look at all of the classes that she teaches, and she's made adjustments to the course descriptions, taking things out. We've adjusted software that we offer. Some of that, specific notation of software has been removed. Project-specific notations are being removed so that it keeps it a little bit more open-ended, because there is that move to let students generate their own ideas, and some of that specific writing has been removed, and you can find that through all of the computer animation, graphic design classes. There's some tweaking involved in all of them. We are removing video production 3 and video production 4. The aim is to kind of move towards those higher level classes, getting more specific in terms of like the introduction to broadcasting. So last year, it was called Introduction to Broadcasting. Now it's going to be called News Broadcasting. So it'll be specific to the morning show and work done on that. Some changes to the digital photography. We're changing the grades that it's open to. Again, this year, 8th graders were able to take it, but she really felt that Foundations in Digital Arts needed to be a prerequisite before taking the digital photography course. So that's been changed to reflect that. And then moving into the music program, that survey that was mentioned earlier by the students did mention art, music history. So talking to Mr. Roth, he felt that it would be best at this time to add that music history component into his intro to music and songwriting. So that has been added to the description. And that's
Thank you,
it
Amy.
for that.
So we're going to go over to Justin, who just has a very modest change in the world language. I won't make him speak on the SAT prep again, but just the reason it's in English and math is because they have 1 term of English, 1 term of math, and it's a semesterized course. So that's why you'll see the change reflected in there. It is still a class that we have in the 2 departments. But Justin, if you can talk about the world language change.
Yes, only just one small sentence we wanted to add added to the course of studies. Just in regards to world language, students could take, for instance, either grade 8 Spanish or Spanish 1 in 8th grade. And I just want to encourage those students who took Spanish 1 to take 2 additional courses in grades 9 through 12, since most colleges do require 2 years of world language at the high school level, 9 through 12. So that's the only addition there.
All right, we're back to Amy with some changes in the science department.
All right, so we looked to change the IPW class that was previously offered to 8th graders, dual enrollment, with the new focus on biology, human approach, biology, ecological approach for 9th and 10th graders, respectively. They needed to have a reboot on that IPW class because it shouldn't be so physics, centric. It does have to have more focus on the 8th grade curriculum. So they've decided kind of to give it a broad look at all the lab sciences and call it Intro to Lab Sciences. It will be offered to grade 8 and dual enrollment students as well. We've opened up another elective, Integrated Arts and Sciences, and that will find grade 8 students having the option of taking a class that integrates art and science in a class that is co-taught by a science and an art teacher. And just changes to removal of certain wording for Intro to Physical Worlds. And that's it.
Thanks, Amy. And then you notice that if you're looking at the same page that Amy's on, the Integrated Arts and Science class has XXX next to it because the number hasn't been attributed to it because it's not in our our power school system. So as you look at the bottom, the Intro to Botany, the Intro to Plumbing, and the Intro to Boat Building, we actually now have course numbers for those. last year that just said XXX for the numbers, so that's the change there. And as much as I hate that I can't use Office 2016 anymore, I had that up until about 3 years ago, maybe. We have now changed that as an online option for students. They no longer are able to take that because Office 2016 is obsolete. I hate to admit that, but it is what it is. So that's all the changes. We've got all the department heads that are involved in departments that are being changed. Certainly, if you have any further questions, we'd love to answer them.
Jeff?
Quick question on, by the way, the table of contents, when I tried to follow it with the page numbers, didn't work. But I assume that's going to sort itself out once this is done, and it's not a draft?
I think it's a formatting issue on some computers, because I had the same issue, but then when my secretary printed it out for me,
Okay.
it looked great. So it might be a Mac issue, if you're using a Mac, because that was my issue.
I wasn't using a Mac.
I wasn't. Same thing.
It's, I assumed it was just because it was a draft and you hadn't really printed the thing for real yet.
We actually worked with Bonnie LaSorsa to try to make the links live so that you could go directly to the page when you, for the change.
Well,
So you had
I
the.
guess I made the mistake of actually using the page numbers rather than the links.
Well,
But to your question.
I don't know, but it's kind of
I
confusing.
promise you, when it's
Yeah.
printed out and it's added to
As
the
I said.
website.
Looks like that.
It will be very clean.
Just
Sorry.
one person's experience, which may be irrelevant.
No worries.
There's within the IB section, there's a Pathways to IB History HL and nothing underneath it. Is that because there's nothing underneath it? Or is that a mistake?
I'm not sure, we don't offer that course anymore. So
So it's intentional?
perhaps it is intentional.
Okay. I just wondered whether it was intentional or a mistake, because it's right between, English and math, and is history, and there's nothing there. Do we teach some IB history?
Global politics, we no longer offer history. It was history of the Americas. It's no
Global
longer-
politics, minor course?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. So it's just, I guess it got listed, but since there's nothing to show it, okay. So I have an unfortunate but 100,000-foot question. As you stated up front that the course of studies indicates our capacity to teach a course. It does not mean the course is going to be taught.
Correct.
And that whether a course is taught is a function of, since we are a student-centric high school, is whether the students actually want the course.
Correct.
So my first question is, how many students does it take?
The million-dollar question.
And do you treat it like the airlines? Meaning, do you assume a level of attrition after 10 people say they want the course, to pick a number?
So, yes, we run what's called a tally report. And the tally report will show us how many students requested the course. What you have to be cautious of is the tally isn't going to be the final number of students in that section. So then, after we run the tally, like, since Mike's closest to me, I'll say, Mike, you've got 120 kids that want English 10 CP. What are you thinking? And then he'll tell me what he's thinking. Now, anything in grades 10 through 12 is pretty static. So in other words, there's not that attrition that you would receive, that you would think you would have. We have the attrition in grade 9, so we really have to keep grade 9 under a very tight microscope because of the fluctuation of kids coming in and coming out in grade 9. So the 9th grade are really the toughest to forecast how many sections you need. We try to, because we know every fall we're going to be in front of you for our presentation on enrollment in courses, we try to make very good business decisions because there's a cost. So if Mike's running, let's say, 6 English 10 classes for those 120 kids, and then it comes out that there's only 100 110 or 105 when we were running. And I would say, well, could we have run 5 sections and maybe use that extra English section for an elective or maybe a core class? So we try to be very smart, and I will share with you, we ran the schedule 75 times last year to try and get as efficient. And these guys get sick of it because I'll send them a new blast. Here's the new, whether it be schedule or all spring long during evaluations, MCAS, AP, IB exam, we're running through this. And it's quite a process to just put the number of hours, combined hours, you're looking over 1,000 hours to get this thing up and running. And I'm probably being modest with 1,000 hours to do it. So we look at it, we try and make sure if we're initiating a class, we absolutely want to be in double digits unless obviously it's a special ed class or maybe an advanced level class. Then we're a little bit more cognizant of, okay, well, we should run this class. Hopefully we can encourage. These folks are my recruiters. Hey, Mike, AP US History. We've only got 8. You think there's some kids in US 2 honors that instead of taking that might do the AP, or maybe they were already in US 2 honors and we want to. So these guys recruit. When we're close, we'll say to them and the guidance counselors, hey, we need about 4 more people in this class to make it work. You guys think you can work that out? And many times we're able to do something like that to make sure we can run those smaller classes with realistic numbers. Our teachers, as you remember, sorry to be a broken record, signed up to teach the 6th class, so we can kind of do some creative things, in my mind, that maybe other school districts can't do because they only teach 5. So we do push the envelope a little bit in that manner, but we really like to make sound decisions that give us the most bang for the buck within our schedule.
But you picked a Mass Corp class, English.
Yes.
Right? Do you apply the same logic to electives?
Unfortunately, there's really not much logic that has to be played into electives because the numbers are so high and there's so few elective teachers. Those conversations usually don't happen. Usually the conversation is, hey, Amy, you got 20 kids that can't get into that one. I don't see how you can create another section, so those 20 kids are going to have to pick another elective.
Okay. So the electives are not...
They used to be, but it's not anymore. Now we have very few elective sections. They're already like, we have a max number based on the class, based on, culinary is 24, wood shop is 20.
Sometimes you literally say to a kid they can't take it because it's full.
I could hire another culinary, not that I have the space, I could hire another culinary teacher and fill that person's schedule if I had the space and still have kids on the waiting list.
Got it, okay. Now, you mentioned advanced classes.
Yes.
So there are times when advanced classes have less than 10.
We didn't run US History, AP US History this year because it had less than 10, and we just couldn't get that number over the double-digit threshold, so we made a business decision this year.
Just didn't run it?
We just didn't run it.
Okay. So it's not just student interest, it's also the budget plays a role.
Unfortunately.
Okay. When you think about, you have basically 2, well, I'm not counting honors, although that is a level of advancement. You have AP and IB are both considered advanced, right?
Correct.
I believe in our staff. You have teachers who could teach a class that had both, and perhaps already do, teach both AP and IB combined, correct?
Correct.
It seems to me that's a fundamentally good business decision and maybe even a good educational decision in the sense that the kids are getting the benefits of both, right?
And they're getting what they wanted.
And they're getting what they wanted. Should it be a philosophy, a practice, that below a certain number of kids in these advanced classes, you automatically merge?
I don't think everything can be merged in the way that we merge some classes. So, for instance, I gave you the scenario with Amy, and Kim, please chime in on this because you're a former IB and AP teacher. Sometimes the curriculums are not aligned as closely as you would like. I would love to be able to do exactly what you described because I feel like I could serve both groups of students and I could feel confident in my numbers in the class and feel like we're being as efficient as we can. But it's not always possible. But we do wherever it is possible, we do run multiple sections in classes. I think of AP Government and the IB Government class. Anytime there's alignment, we do that.
So that's actually a great concrete example. It's AP Government, but IB Global Politics. See, so it doesn't mesh very well.
Yeah.
I can speak to, I could do a bit of overlapping at the beginning of the year where they all start together. But then they do have to branch off because the nature of both AP and IB are anyway is that they do come up with their own sustained investigation and they drive what they're investigating. As an umbrella, the techniques, the mediums, the conversations about formal qualities and art are going to exist in both realms, but the students are all doing very different content.
So what I'm hearing is, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, your first choice is to have separate AP and IB classes. Your second choice, if at all possible, is to merge them. And your third choice is to cut one or the other or both because there's just not enough kids.
100% accurate, 100% accurate. And unfortunately, I hate that third option, but sometimes, you know, it's at the end of the day, we've got to make sound decisions and make sure we're maximizing our capacity.
And before the chair kicks me out, I have one more question, and that is, having AP and IB, the combination of both, has a certain financial cost. If you're a kid who has no plans to take any of them, are you in any way, shape, or form being sacrificed by the fact that we're trying to do both, and the CP kids, the 8th graders, the electives, the people who want to take electives but have no plans to ever take an IB or an AP, you know, you're just not intentionally perhaps, but just the fact of us trying to be all things to all students, which I love the aspiration. Are we sacrificing some kids in order to do that?
Well, I look at it this way. You know, a student needs, let's just say an English class, an IB English class, they need
This is a 100,000-foot question.
I understand. No, but it's a valid question. The student has to be in an English class. If it's an IB or an AP or CP, they have to be in that English class. We have to educate those kids during that period. Is there kind of that byproduct where maybe there's an elective or two you're not offering because of the AP? I guess you can make that argument, but I make the argument that many years ago, and I'm sorry, broken record again, our teachers agreed to teach an extra class so we could do things like this, so we could push the envelope, so we could run more electives, so we could require more credits to graduate. So they would, philosophically, they'd have the same caseload. Instead of it being spread over 5 periods, it's now spread over 6 periods. And we could do those kind of things. So, you know, if we really spent 5 or 6 hours identifying all the IB courses and seeing where those kids could go, we could probably come up with 1 to 3 electives that we could be running. But I would argue that the importance of having these advanced level classes is just as important as maybe those 3 electives. And the transcripts that these kids are coming out with, the colleges they're getting into, the scholarships they're receiving, I think are all a byproduct of the advanced level courses that they're taking. So that's my take.
Well, you know, I have never, in the course of study process that's presented to me over the last 12 plus 13 years, never even wanted to interfere in the process of how you, because all the courses you described sound valuable to me. So I'm asking these questions, you know, just to plant seeds with you and the great people in front of me and the superintendent who's new to this process of thinking about it. And of course, with the full knowledge that the budget process this year is terrible and the budget process next year will be worse.
Just going to get through next year at this point.
I hear you loud and clear.
April?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. April?
So sort of to Jeff's point, I know that you had mentioned, you know, if we did not offer both AP and IB, would we be able to add more electives? And having a current senior in the high school and having several friends throughout the South Shore, throughout Massachusetts with kids in varying ages of high school, we offer more electives than any school that I know of already. Like the options that we have for every level of interest, every level of student learning. Even meeting with other districts when we go to the MASC conferences and they find out some of the stuff that Wareham is doing, they're like shocked. So I think, as much as I know that we would love to have as many as possible and entertain any interest of any child that wants to do any class, I think we offer way more than most districts do, as well as AP and IB and dual enrollment for both 8th grade and high school students going to BSC. So I think our district, in my opinion, has done an excellent job of finding that balance to touch, at least even in a small way, every single interest of every single possibility. And with ROTC, you have things for the kids that want to be more military guided after high school, and with the new career pathways programs and some of the more vocational electives, we're opening doors for kids that might not necessarily have a 4-year college on the horizon, or might want to leave and go to culinary school or things like that. So I think, budget restrictions aside, because we all know that that's the bane of all of our existence as this stands, but I think given the resources that we have as a district, given the passion that the students, I think we're in a better place than a lot of people with what we can offer to our kids.
Well said, thank you. I agree 100%.
Very quick follow-up.
After I talk.
Sorry.
I'll give it a microphone to you in just a minute. So I guess sticking in my head still is, can you be an IB school without having a DP program? No. And so we have a DP program that basically gives diplomas to 6 kids in the last 5 years. I know we haven't been in it all that long, and then 2 kids this year. It seems like it's so few in that diploma program. That's what sticks in my craw. I don't disagree with the IB philosophy at all. It really is rich, engaging. It's what good teaching is. And so I support the IB philosophy. It just seems to me, though, that the fact that we have so few DP diplomas given out, and it has to have an impact on scheduling. It just has to. It's bang for the buck, I guess. And I wish we could have the IB philosophy without having all this handcuffing with the rest of the budget and everything else. And I still worry about the 75, 80, 90% of students that aren't in IB, will never take an IB course in Wareham. And what are we doing for them? We need to triage and give treatment. If we were a MASH hospital right now, I feel like we're giving elective surgery when there's patients that need real critical surgery right now. And I hope we can do both.
I think oftentimes we focus on IB as just a program, but it is a lot more than that, right? It is that philosophy that you buy into. And I think with this inclusion course, our goal is to offer it to all students, because in order for all students to be successful, these are the skills that they're going to need to enter into the real world, whether it's through a career pathway or through college. I think if we stop focusing on it just being a narrow program that we offer in conjunction with everything else, I think we'll be more successful in the long run.
And I think, too, you've just got to keep in mind that these are advanced level courses for upperclassmen, so it kind of takes that number and really cuts it, and almost a third of the school would be eligible just based on their grade level. So it's not something theoretically that like an 8th grader or a 9th grader could be involved in, and very few 10th graders can be. So the audience isn't as big as like 619 or whatever it is now. The audience is more like 200 kids, and if we've got 85, involved in it, that's almost half this.
Well, I would just hope, and I'll turn it over to April in a second, that we would, if I continue my analogy, if we consult with our doctors and nurses in the building to see what they think and what do they believe about the program and how it's working, and I hope we do that, or we'll do that in the future. April.
So I know that you said very few necessarily have gotten the full diploma, but just like AP, the kids that take the IB test, even though they're only taking certain IB classes, are still getting IB credits that can be used for college credit. So it's still beneficial even without the full diploma. So like Dylan has 2 IB classes. If he succeeds in his IB exams for those 2 classes, that's a huge benefit because he's getting credits towards college, which is in the long run saving me money, but in the, you know, and his AP credit as well. So like, it's, I look at it not just so much of, so do you have percentages of how many kids are getting IB credits to move forward?
I think we presented that at one of the IB nights that we did here. There's a lot, but more importantly, excuse me, more importantly to me, and I know credits and tuition and things like that, they're taking college-level courses and succeeding. So as they transition to college, that transition is going to be so much easier because of the rigor of the courses that they have selected at the high school.
Is there a success rate that Wareham has on, once they've graduated from Wareham High School, and not necessarily counting if it was AP or IB or if those credits worked, do we have any sort of information of how many of those kids that did go on to college graduated from college, and if so, like what percentage of those were in those classes? Do we have that information?
Through Naviance, as a matter of fact, we have that data. The tough part with that data, because we extracted it a couple times, is there's so many variables, like in, you know, these students, when you try to reach out to them to figure out what that variable was, then they're not responsive because they're not proud. But a lot of times what we have found is that, you know, finances play a big part in it in regards to them, you know, graduating. We use a 5-year measurement post-high school, what percentage of kids that enrolled graduated within 5 years. And when we start to dig pretty deep, there's a lot of variables in regards to kids graduating, not graduating. But we have never broken it down the way you've described. We look at it from kind of a holistic view. But it might be, that might be a good lens, maybe, I'm not sure when we'll have spare time, but it would be an interesting study. But to your question, we have not broken it down as far as like AP and IB. We've looked at it as a graduating class. But I wish I had the time to really break that down, because that would be a real interesting study.
Joyce and Andrea? Joyce?
So just, I guess, to go back to my original question and what Kevin just said, you know, about hearing from everybody about about the IB program and how it affects everyone in the school. Because, Ashley, as you say, so it's more than just the 6 people who are getting the diplomas, but we've never really heard about the success, I mean, other than April's son, in the program. And I think that would be an important piece of information. And Mr. Murray, you certainly make a good case for the new English class. But I think at some point, I mean, we've never heard about the program, about the success of the program. And I've asked many times, and it's just never happened. So I think for myself, before I would approve any additional IB classes or to move forward in this way with it, I would just want to hear that, and hopefully that's something that we can work towards. You know, again, I've asked it in different meetings, and it's just never been answered, so I'm just one person on the school committee, but I would, before we move forward in any way with IB, I would like to hear more about the success of the program.
Right. And my only caveat, more than happy to come back, and we can always, again, this is a process. It's about a 6-month process to get the schedule done. And, you know, we can always come back and retract whatever needs to be retracted. But there are almost 700 kids that we'll be scheduling shortly that I would hate to have held up over a concern for a program or a concern for a class or two. That's my only concern. More than happy to come back and do any presentation that's requested. I think I'm here at almost every meeting anyway, so it's not going to put me out. And I certainly can bring whatever people we need to be at that meeting. More than happy to do that.
Okay.
Dr. Schwam?
I just have a request, actually, from the chair and the committee, if we could have some time on an agenda so that I can, it's related to this, but it isn't at the same time. I'd like to talk about how important it is to the research and all of the other information that I've been collecting over a long period of time. And more recently, the Department of Education has basically saying that we need to stop remediating and accelerate our learning and offer really dynamic programs for our kids, because the way in which we've done it in the past has not been working. And of course, we've known that here for a very long time, but now the department has money behind that, and they've garnered some support our way. And I'd like to be able to just give you all that information as well, because I think it's an important element in how we think about things moving forward.
Sure, we can get that, we can get that on the agenda, yep.
So I'm sure it is, but what I really want to see is, I am not arguing that IB isn't a very valuable program and has many benefits and many things to offer many students. I guess my question is it the right program for Wareham right now for our students? And that's all I'm asking when I ask about, the success of our students and how does IB contribute to that other than the kids who are in the IB diploma program? So exactly what you're saying, but I just want to hear it about our students,
No,
about
and
our
I'm,
school.
whether it's, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other what the decision is in the end, but as long as we have somewhere to go that's accelerating the learning process for kids, right? So I just think it's important that you all know, not related to IB, what is being said externally that then, right? So that I think then we have all of the pieces of the puzzle more clearly, and then we can move in whatever direction you guys decide.
Jeff?
Just a quick question, Ashley, you may know this. If you don't, that's okay. Do you have any idea what percentage of Sturgis students end up with an IB diploma?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Because I visited Sturgis.
It's small.
I visited Sturgis years ago, and it was small then. So the fact that ours is small I'm not sure means all that much.
Jeff,
Okay.
I went to a training many years ago with a principal from New York, and we were just researching it at the time, and he was single digits every single year. So it's not, I don't think it's unique to us, and I think we could argue the pandemic kind of, and I'm sure it impacted everyone, really impacted some progress as well. So it's not unique. To me, it's more about the opportunity for the student to take the class. And I guess maybe to a fault, we don't push the diploma program, because I want this to happen organically. And the parents will say, what should I sign up for, AP, IB? So we're going to give you the description, and you have to make that decision. We're not going to push, and we're not going to prescribe.
To Joyce's point, which I think is an excellent one, the only problem I have is I'm not sure how I would actually measure the success of the kids who are taking IB courses. I mean, what exactly are you going to look at to determine whether it's been successful or not? There are so many variables associated with any given child who takes it. So that's just a comment, although I agree completely. When you can measure something, and I know you agree with that because no one's more data-driven. So I think it's a tough request, but it's also a very valid request. And the other really quick question, totally unrelated, is I think it was you, Ashley, who mentioned dual enrollment with BCC and CCC, yes?
For the EMT course, as well as criminal justice.
Are we still doing something with BSU?
Yes.
We are.
We just looked at those courses because they offer EMT.
Okay, but we're still doing some.
Ironically, BCC and Cape Cod, that's how we initiated the dual enrollment program at BSU. It actually started there and then morphed to BSU.
And I'm way behind in my knowledge on this, but for some reason I remember there was a transportation issue with BSU. Is that still a problem?
No, it was almost a transportation issue, right, Kim? You can speak to that.
Yes, there was almost a transportation issue, but Marie Ferreira was able to secure transportation through a company. So it hasn't been an issue, and honestly, it's been better than it's ever been.
We would like, though, to be able to have our own people driving it at some point in time. And I know Kristen's nodding her head over there, because it is a little bit expensive.
Whoa. You suggesting BSU is not subsidizing that?
They haven't subsidized it for a while. That was a grant through Megpeace. It wasn't really BSU. It was a Megpeace grant.
It was never BSU?
It was a Megpeace grant. I think BSU, Kim, they maybe helped us out with tuition a little bit, but it was...
So their cost per course is significantly lower than any other dual enrollment.
But for
They're not doing anything with transportation at this point.
You know, they provided transportation, but it was paid for through the grant through Makepeace. But we used their vans, but we're too big for vans now.
All set, thanks.
April?
how long have we been running, like, not just the preparation and the training, how long have we been running the IB program at the high school?
Running it with actual courses?
Yes, not the planning, not the strategies, not the,
Fifth year?
5 years.
5 years.
We were approved in May of 2017.
okay, so 5 years, most of those kids that started out with it are now just starting to maybe possibly with post-COVID finish college. So to Joyce's point, I do want to note the significance and the success for our kids. I do agree that that's important. But 5 years with almost 3 as a pandemic is not going to be an easy enough, I don't think, measure for us to dissect our entire IB program in general, let alone tonight. And I think that what you guys have presented as the changes in the coursework, the hypothetical, there was no changes necessarily to any of the IB classes or adding any IB classes except an IB structured class. Right, but it's not IB weighted, right? So there's no actual change to the IB program. So as valid as I think everyone's questions and comments have been in the essence of time, I move that we vote so that we can get through that student start selection process with how time consuming this is. And if we need to get further data on IB at another meeting, or when there's more measurable data that we can use within the 5 years that, we've seen, however that is, if we reach out to other schools and find out how they've collected their data, whatever needs to happen in the meantime, but I just move that we vote the course selection.
Vote for the course selection or move that we vote?
Move that we vote, like that we move on.
All right, so can I make a motion?
You may.
Whoa, was that a motion?
Well,
Yes, that
does
was a
anyone want to
motion to
second
vote
April's
on the
motion to
course
vote?
selection.
To vote.
Well, your motion was to vote, right?
Right, because that's what it says, motion, vote on the course selection that they've presented.
I think she was moving to support it.
Yes.
That's, okay, I'm just trying to clarify.
So I'll second, but defer to Joyce.
Now we have Joyce, thank you.
So my question is, could we make changes to it? Could we approve it without the addition of the 11th grade IB English class and the personal, I'm not going to say it right, but the personal professional skills?
But they're not technically IB, they're just using the IB format.
The English class is IB, and the other one wouldn't be necessary next year. No one would be taking it next year anyway, right? So that would give us at least a little time to come back with some of these answers. And I say that with all due respect to everyone who has spoken here tonight. I just, there's so many unanswered questions. So just for that reason, I would just want to change it so that without those 2 courses.
Jeff?
I'll take that as an amendment.
Okay. I don't know what the proper process is.
But before I know how to respond, I'd like to understand the implications to the high school if we did what Joyce is describing.
It's going to slow down the process, and the kids will get their schedule at a later point in time. I can't, because I don't know when the next meeting would be and if it's even approved at that point. It will slow down the process. Will it pause it for a longer period of time? It could. I mean, it's just, my feeling is, like, we can always come back and change this again if the school committee chooses, but I would be very apprehensive to roll out a course selection sheet and then all of a sudden, I mean, we might as well not even run those classes, because if they're not on the course selection sheet, they're not going to sign up for it.
Well, and I'd also like to understand from Mr. Murray the implications for your department if we didn't run that course.
Well, everyone has to take an 11th grade English. I mean, in terms of the logistics of it, I'm just happy that I don't do what Mr. Palladino does, because I can't wrap my head around it.
The kids who are on IEPs have the service of Inclusion English, so they have to be in an Inclusion English class. It doesn't specify what type of Inclusion English class.
So the implications, if we did what Joyce is describing, they simply wouldn't be exposed to the IB philosophy. Is that a fair statement?
It would be a lot easier if we rolled it out as is and then pulled things back if needed.
Well, I'm sorry, I was proposing that we approve it without those 2 classes.
Right.
With the-
Once
without the-
once it's not there, we might as well just not come back and talk about that, because it's gonna, basically, we give the students these courses and say, here's what you can take for English 11. We need to get that, IB is 85 students. I've got almost 700 students I need to schedule. It would be a lot easier if we said, we're approving it as is, but then we're gonna come back and talk about it to extract it after the fact, because what I would do is I would take those kids, so say it's the IB English that's in question, it would be very simple after the fact to say, okay, we're not doing that, we're just gonna put in regular inclusion. Versus to say,
I completely
sign up,
understand.
and oh, by the way, we gave you a sheet, but now we're running this IB inclusion, we might as well not even have it on
I
there.
completely understand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Scott, but I was proposing that we don't run it next year.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were, oh, I
So we
misunderstood.
approve the course of studies without those two classes for the next year, and then perhaps the following year, after we get the questions answered, we consider it for the following year. I wasn't trying to make that process any more
Okay, no,
complicated for you, sorry.
that's, okay, thank you.
April?
I just want to go back to Mr. Murray's perspective of how, for those students on IEPs and in the special, education platform, that having an inclusion class and how important it is, especially with the IB, like he said, preparing them for college. That's my biggest fear, is Dylan going to college next year and me having had to chase his 504 his entire life to get him the supports that he needs. And I'm gonna get emotional because this is important, because this is about our kids. And having a kid that's gone through it, that's in that category, knowing that there would have been a class like that that he could have taken earlier than now to prepare him to not fail when he gets to college and doesn't have a principal holding his hand, has a professor that could be cold and detached and treat everybody like nothing. I have some clients and some friends' kids in college that they get nothing from their professors. They get nothing. They feel like they got more education at Wareham High School than they did in their first semester at college. And if we have an opportunity to provide that to our kids, even if 5 kids choose that class, that's 5 more kids that are set up for success in their future because we gave them an option. It's an option, and it's an important option. And I'm sorry that I'm emotional about it, and I understand what you're saying about it, but if we don't give them a chance, then we're saying that we have no hope for them, that they just don't deserve that chance, and they do. And it's a big deal to me to have things like that would include those kids, because it's not IB weighted, it's not an IB diploma thing, it's just following a structure to set them up to succeed. And not offering that, I think, is a huge disservice to a lot of kids that could possibly use that as a tool to feel normal, possibly for the first time in their entire educational career, not feel coddled, not feel handheld, but be able to succeed on their own with skills that we have the capacity and the passion and the want to give them.
Andrea?
I just have a technical question. So IB is offering the inclusive services, the training and everything for free to us because we're an IB school.
Yes.
So will that still be available to all of the people that we would want to have engaged in that?
So there's a
If we wait?
partnership on the table with IB. IB is really pushing becoming a more inclusive environment for all students. The partnership would enable us to offer this course with no additional cost to the school, provide the school with an additional consultant to help set up this inclusion course. So additionally, resources, support for admin moving forward. That is on the table currently. I can't be certain that they will run this partnership again
For the following year?
Right. So they
I
offered,
just-
it's, right now, it's a one-time thing. I believe they have 30 schools in the
I think it's
Northeast so
58
far.
now.
58.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't sure if that would follow us for the next year. Like if we did wait, if that was something that we could also take advantage of later on.
It's quite a, I mean, when you think about it, it's quite a large sum of money. So, I mean, that we can train as many teachers as we would like. The consultant is free of charge. Those are, it can be very expensive, so.
I was just curious. Thank you. I wasn't sure.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept the program studies minus the Career Pathways IB course and the inclusion course in grade 11. Do I have a second? I'm going to second it for the case of having a vote. Any more discussion? Dr. DeAndrea?
So I'm just going to advocate for leaving it in. And the reason why I'm going to advocate for leaving it in is there's been a lot of work that's gone in to putting this class together. I know that there's a teacher who wants to teach it, and she's very excited about teaching it. And when teachers are excited about classes that they're able to teach and learn about, they do a good job. They're enthusiastic, and their heart's really in it. I know that there's PD opportunities for that teacher over the summer to support her. And I think that Mike's description was excellent of what, as you said, Mr. Chairman, what good teaching looks like. And so I would ask that the committee include it in the document.
All right, we're going to take a vote then on the amendment of, let me repeat that again, of accepting the program of studies minus the pathways and grade 11 inclusion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
And I'm going to abstain. So 3-1-1.
Can I make a motion to accept them as they are?
It's already on the floor.
So we have that original motion, and I
I'll second it then.
seconded, okay. So the motion on the floor is to accept the program of studies as it currently exists. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
And I will abstain, 3-1-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. I just had one question for the department chairs. How do you go from math to PE and from world language to science and English to JROTC?
That's the one question I didn't ask.
Seems crazy, but God bless you and good luck. All right.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next up, we have the superintendent's report.
They never got back to me, so I emailed them tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First on, for my report, are gifts. And so we have a number of gifts. We have first 88 boxes of school supplies, which includes pencils, glues, highlighters, dry eraser markers, and paper, to the Wareham High School from Staples Give Back Program. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, do you want me to go through all four of them?
Let's do them all. Yeah, we'll go through all four and we'll accept at one time.
$20,000 grant from Makepeace Foundation to the Wareham Public Schools. $100 donation from an anonymous donor to the Wareham High School Library. And we have 8 Cape Cod 5 mini grants awarded to 8 of our teachers who applied for and received those grants. And I think that they were outlined in your, they were not outlined in your report because we just recently learned of these. So, but we have 8 that vary in from a low of about $285 to a high of $500.
We have a motion to approve. April, second.
With applause, yes.
All in favor? Aye. And we thank everyone for those generous gifts.
Yes, thank you. On my superintendent's newsletter, there are the bill and payroll warrants for your approval, so I ask for your approval.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 500.
And that's all I have.
All right, we come to school committee reports. Any report from the policy subcommittee?
No, we meet next week, so I'll have a report hopefully at our next meeting.
Thank you. And any report from the communication and public relations committee at this time?
No, we haven't met.
Okay. Any other business?
No. Not since our
Not
last
since
school
the last
meeting, yeah.
meeting. No, we have not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other business? Jeff?
To our superintendent, have you been following the library problems at Old Rochester Regional?
I have read a couple of articles about it, yes.
Is there any chance?
Oh, Pandora's box, what are you doing?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, do I have a motion?
You're not allowed to make that motion.
But I will accept one right now.
I said it.
All right.
We have a,
On that note, I'll second the motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500, meeting is adjourned.